Thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk from Ramallah.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, your morning show on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app or YouTube. And thanks for joining us wherever you are. If I sound out of breath, it's because I just sat down on my chair, and you know when you adjust it and it fell like about a foot, whoop. So I just sort of was rushing to get it back up to level so I can do the show this morning. It's cold again. I know, no shock, but clear and cold today, sunny in Winnipeg, a high of minus 13. All right, taking my breath. Minus 13, so much warmer than we have had the last couple of days. But keep in mind with wind chill, it's still going to feel like minus 35 this morning, and that will improve a little bit this afternoon. So thanks for being with us. The morning show's on until 8:37. Good morning to Corey Funk, who directs the show, and will be covering the commute on air. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who is always styling behind the controls. Abby covers the weather on air as well. And good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, who's our YouTube producer. Hi, Kev. Kev is saying and waving hello in case you're watching on YouTube. It is 2 minutes to 6 o'clock. Heather Wells is here also with news headlines, and it's been busy in the news department. Heather, what are you leading with?
Yeah, it really has been busy. We'll tell you that monthly property tax payment installments in Winnipeg are going up about 50% for most homes next month, in January 1st. A provincial education tax rebate from July to December this year caused monthly tax installments to be unusually low during the latter half of 2024. They are going to bounce back starting on the 1st. City Council Chair, Finance Chair Jeff Barotti blames the province for the fluctuation. We'll hear what's going on there. And it seems Winnipeggers want to compost. In the 2 months since 15 drop-off sites opened, demand has tripled. 40 tons of organics have been diverted from the landfill since mid-October. We're going to hear from Compost Winnipeg in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Interesting to have that data after so many years of not having it. So not having composting available like that. So we'll dig into that throughout the program. Also, things we're going to be looking at on the show today. The need for the Christmas cheer board is up. They need drivers quite urgently. So we're going to hear from them this morning in the program. Also, we will hear from a Winnipegger who's being honored for preserving the Ojibwe language. She received the Order of Canada yesterday. She was in Ottawa.
On Cue with Tom Power.
It's been 8 years since Gwen Stefani released an album of original music. Now, after some time away from music to heal, she's back with a new album called Bouquet. Gwen Stefani will be here to tell you about making the album and to look back on her time with the great No Doubt. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. We begin with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Turkey in talks zeroing in on the situation next door.
We're very focused on Syria, on the opportunity that now is before us and before the Syrian people to move out from under the shackles of Bashar al-Assad to a different and better future for the Syrian people, one that the Syrian people decide for themselves.
Blinken says both U.S. and Turkey will continue working to keep ISIS down in Syria and that there was broad agreement over Syria's future. But while there is optimism, aid agencies say there is an enormous need for humanitarian assistance. CBC's senior international correspondent Margaret Evans has more from Damascus.
The sense of a new dawn breaking still dominates the streets of Damascus. People wrapped in or handing out the opposition standard, Syria's new flag.
I'm very happy because the future is for us, not for the last rulers.
There are still underlying nerves. The various rebel groups who've taken control disparate and untried in ruling a country the size of Syria. Aid agencies hope the euphoria doesn't overshadow the ongoing need for humanitarian assistance in the country.
You've seen it, jubilation
Canadian Ken Crossley is the country director for the World Food Programme in Syria. He says humanitarian assistance must remain a safety valve for people, especially during times of transition.
There's anxiety about what might be coming next. And so people are moving from one city to another where they think they might find family, friends.
That's on top of a population where millions have already been displaced by Syria's long civil war. The UN estimates that more than 70% of people here are reliant on assistance of some kind. The WFP has just launched a new funding appeal to buy and distribute food for up to 2.8 million people. He says the group established relations with the rebel forces as they moved south from Aleppo through local NGOs.
Establishing technical contact very, very quickly with new authorities coming into town to let them know who we were.
Crossley describes himself as cautiously optimistic about Syria's future, but says the WFP is preparing for all scenarios. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Damascus.
Ukraine says nearly 300 Russian missiles and drones targeted the country's energy infrastructure this morning. It's the latest in a dozen attacks against Ukraine's power grid this year. Russia says the strikes were in response to Ukraine using American-made missiles to hit targets in Russia. Briar Stewart has the story.
Inside a metro station in Kyiv, residents sit bundled in their winter coats, looking at their phones for updates on the latest missile and drone attack, which has sent some families underground. Every night my child is constantly frightened, said one mother. Ukraine's president says Russia launched 93 missiles and nearly 200 drones at sites across the country on Friday morning. He said most of the missiles were shot down. There are few details on the impact of the attacks, but officials say some equipment at thermal power plants were damaged and rolling power cuts were introduced as a result. Attack comes as it continues to try to push forward in southeastern Ukraine near the strategic hub of Pokrovsk. While in the north, Ukraine believes that Moscow is likely trying to recapture hundreds of square kilometers of territory in Russia's Kursk region ahead of January 20th. When U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is inaugurated. Trump has repeatedly vowed to quickly end the war after taking office.
So it's slightly irrelevant to us on the ground.
This soldier, who asked CBC News to only be identified by his call sign Voodoo, is a Brit who's been fighting for Ukraine for 6 months. He's been in the Kursk area throughout the fall.
And whatever happens, we'll be here until the end.
Half of a dozen Ukrainian soldiers based in Kursk have told CBC News that they've been ordered to hold the line and that they have a hard time envisioning just what kind of deal Trump could broker, given that the Kremlin says it's not willing to make any concessions when it comes to Ukraine. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
The head of the United Healthcare Group is paying tribute to the company's senior executive. In an opinion piece in today's New York Times, Andrew Whitty says he is struggling to make sense of Brian Thompson's killing and also the vitriol directed at his colleagues who've been barraged by threats. Thompson was shot dead last week as he arrived for the company's investor conference in New York. His killing has ignited an outpouring of anger from Americans struggling to receive and pay for medical care. The head of Air Canada is one of 4 airline CEOs appearing before the House of Commons Transport Committee today. They're facing questions about carry-on baggage fees. Air Canada says it will begin charging passengers on its cheapest flights. It all comes as we learn that Ottawa has sold its Air Canada shares at a profit. For more on this, the CBC's Janice McGregor joins us from our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what do we know so far?
John, like many international carriers, Air Canada was in dire straits during the pandemic. And by April of 2021, the federal government had to step in with a massive $5.9 billion loan package. And at the time, it also purchased about $500 million worth of shares, giving it about a 6% stake in what's otherwise a private airline. But this was never intended to be a long-term investment. And contrary to 3 years ago, the airline industry now is doing quite well. It no longer needs loans, and Air Canada shares are on the upswing, part of the general surge in the markets this fall. So, Globe and Mail is reporting that the federal shares were sold in 2 transactions this week on Wednesday and Thursday. The Finance Department and Air Canada have yet to issue statements officially confirming the sales. We don't know exactly how much the taxpayer made on this, but the feds bought shares when the price was just over $23, and Air Canada shares now are up over $25. So the original $500 million investment plus a tidy profit, that's now available to put against this year's deficit. Chrystia Freeland is expected to release the public accounts for this year on Monday. We'll see to what degree this profitable transaction helps the federal books in a fall economic update that's otherwise expected to feature a lot of red ink.
Okay, so back to Air Canada, Janice. If the carrier is making money again, why are they squeezing their passengers with bag fees?
Yeah, that's exactly the question MPs want to ask when Air Canada's CEO and top executives from other major airlines are called before the Transport Committee on Parliament Hill this afternoon. When Air Canada announced on December 4th that passengers paying its basic economy fare are going to have to pay $35 for their carry-on, well, that sparked a fresh round of grumpiness from passengers fed up with being nickeled and dimed as airlines compete with fares that aren't really as low as they first seem once you tack on all the fees. Transport Minister Anita Anand has also said she's disappointed to see the airlines squeezing passengers at a difficult time for a lot of households. She wants to talk to the airlines too to understand their decisions. Look, these are private companies, but this is a federally regulated industry, and it is good politics to side with consumers.
CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
Donald Trump's former national security advisor has a message for Canada. Brace for more ridicule and threats as Trump returns to the White House. John Bolton also had some tips for Justin Trudeau. He spoke with the CBC's Katie Simpson.
I think Trump gets a laugh from it. I think it's that simple.
John Bolton says Donald Trump is revealing his true self when he cracks jokes about Canada and makes references to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as a governor. Bolton knows how the president-elect thinks. While he's a critic now, he once served as Trump's national security advisor.
He can be mean at times, and I think he's poking at Justin Trudeau and trying to humiliate him.
Bolton says the best way for Canada to avoid Trump's tariff threat is to play into the president-elect's ego.
Make the case not why the threat will hurt Canada, but why not invoking the tariffs will help Trump. What makes Donald Trump look good?
And he says Trudeau should avoid weighing in on domestic U.S. politics. Surprised to learn the Prime Minister suggested women's rights suffered a setback when Kamala Harris lost the election.
If Prime Minister Trudeau hasn't figured this out, I'm happy to offer some free advice. Don't get involved in the middle of American politics. It's not going to do you any good.
Bolton says on top of meeting Trump's demands to improve border security, Canada could head off some of his complaints by stepping up its defense spending and taking on more responsibility on the world stage. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca, and you can listen to us live every morning on the CBC News app. Just tap on the local icon. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, the app, and YouTube. Hey, it's going to be a little warmer today, folks. Something to look forward to. Still frigid cold with the wind chill this morning. Don't let me lead you too astray, but our daytime high is much improved. So Abby's in with our forecast in a moment. Welcome to Friday, and thanks for being with us. Let's get into what's coming up this hour on the show. We're going to talk to a Manitoba farmer who has found an unusual recording booth really close to home, and people are loving the sound that it makes. So that's coming up straight ahead. Stay tuned if you love cool music. In addition, this hour, the Christmas bird count is celebrating 125 years. We're going to talk to Jody Allaire of Birds Canada about how you can get involved in this annual event. And we also this hour are going to be talking more about the ongoing strike at Canada Post and why the federal government has yet to step in. So we'll lean into that in some more detail. Right now, let's find out what's happening in the news with our headlines and Heather Wells.
Good morning. Thousands of Winnipeg homeowners just found out through email yesterday their monthly property tax installments will rise about 50% in January. Most of the increase is a rebound effect from a provincial education tax rebate this year. Lori Penner owns a home in southwest Winnipeg, and she says many homeowners need more than 2 or 3 weeks to budget for bigger tax installments. And some small Manitoba business owners say the federal government's GST holiday is more like the nightmare before Christmas. Starting tomorrow, the federal tax will be taken off a wide range of goods and services. David Newsom at Hildegard's Bakery says he's working overtime, changing his menus and signage. And Ben Shantz at Game Night Games says it's created a logistical nightmare. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Yeah, tonight's a big night because obviously that's when everything's got to change. So I know that the weekend morning show tomorrow with Nadia, like they're going to be looking at how tonight's going to go for all those businesses.
A sleepless one.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, if you are up after having hopefully not a sleepless night, let's find out what the day's going to bring for the weather. Here's Abby now with our forecast.
Good morning, Maris. It's still frigid across the province. Most of the regions will definitely still be staying well below minus 20s with breezy conditions and the wind chills, even making it feel colder as you wake up this morning. So you still need to take precautions against frostbite as you start your day. Currently, Winnipeg, we are at minus 22. You look up, it's clear. You can spot the moon. You can spot some stars up there. For today, these clear conditions will take us most of the day. We will see sunny skies, then a transition to a mix of sun and clouds later in the morning. It will be chilly. Our high would get to around minus 13, though with the wind chill factored in, it's going to feel like minus 35. So be cautious of frostbite if you are outside today, making that transition from one bus to another. And then tonight, the skies will turn cloudy near the midnight period, and we are still going to stay around minus 13. The wind chill then drops near minus 23. Tomorrow, we're going to see a mix of sun and clouds. In other regions, the day is just going to be sunny, shifting to a mix of sun and clouds later. Highs for most of the regions around at minus 13 from the south central region all the way down to the interlake regions. But the cold is the main thing on the table. We still have that wind chill close to minus 37 in most of the regions. While it's colder up north, we're looking at wind chills in the valleys of minus 42. Overall, a chilly day across the province, cold stats, and frostbite is still in play.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Abby's the season of hats. Are you going to wear a different hat every day in December?
The toques are going to be coming out.
Okay, I like
soon.
it. So we had the floppy ear ones with the fur, and now this morning you've got like the sort of buffalo plaid one.
This is still floppy.
Yeah. Oh, you still got ears on that one?
Yeah.
Look at you. The man has cold ears. I love that red and black check. All right, let's get into the morning commute with Corey Funk. Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Yeah, no major issues that I've heard of yet. Highways are actually looking more or less fairly clear up north and down south, actually. But if you're out there, you see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Okay, we're going to start this morning's show with a little guessing game. So listen to this and guess where this music was recorded. So a big echo, quiet instrumentation. Was it recorded in a church or a big hall somewhere maybe? Well, what we're hearing is a recording of Manitoba musician Zachary Weeb, goes by Zachary, covering a Bon Iver song in an empty grain silo. Did you guess that? I'm not sure if you guessed that or not. I wouldn't have. It's so cool. The singer-songwriter has always had an ear for acoustics, and after years of filling up and emptying the grain silo on his farm, it was only natural he'd want to hear how the silo sounds. So in 2021, he actually recorded and shared a video, you might recall, on TikTok. It went viral. But since then, his fans have been begging for a full recorded version of it. And today, that recording is out. And Zachary's up early, which I always appreciate, especially with musicians. He's with us via Zoom. Hi there.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm well. You don't look like you're in a grain silo for the interview.
Not this one, I figured I'd change up the scenery.
I love this. So what do you love about what it sounds like when you're singing in the silo?
I think there's just something about the acoustics and the feeling it entails when you're listening to the music and the echo. But yeah, I think it just transports you somewhere and hopefully invokes a feeling for people.
For people that sort of have not been following your journey with music and singing in this way, why did you decide to do it in the first place? Is it something that you had been doing and you thought this would be a great recording? Or tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, it's something I had explored when I first started posting online, and I'd just been always searching for places with unique acoustics or acoustics that would enhance the video in any way and visually as well. So I think being a farmer and having access to these that do sound amazing in the right circumstances, I figured I would use it to my advantage, and it kind of just, the traction of the videos seemed to be increased when I would play in the silo, so it kind of became my thing.
What was your reaction when it first started taking off, going viral on TikTok, and you realized people were really loving this?
I just didn't, for the first little bit, it didn't feel quite real. And I think your brain has to get around the metrics of, how many people are liking and sharing it. But it was really wild to see. I really never expected it especially when I made that cover, I never expected it to go as viral as it did. And people continually using the sound for their videos today is it's still wild to me. And I'm just grateful for that people like the music.
Well, we're going to talk less so we can hear more of the music. But before we do that, I do have to ask, for the sound nerds up and out there, did you add any special effects or is what we're alteration? Or is what we're hearing purely the silo?
So I really tried to capture it as you would hear it in the silo. And the best way I found to do that and get it as close to the original video as I could was to record it on my iPhone with a voice memo. And I think it translates pretty well. But yeah, I'd love to hear people's thoughts on it. It's a very DIY recording setup and just a little EQ on it, nothing too special. So there's no added effects or anything. Everything that you hear on the recording is from me, the guitar, or the silo echo.
Is this seriously is this seriously a silo that's usually supposed to be full of grain, or is this a spare one on the farm?
So this one is actually a spare one. But normally I do sing in a silo that we fill with grain. But
that's fun. What's the reaction of other people on the farm with you when you're in there doing it? Is it sort of like, leave me alone, I'm in the silo recording, or what?
I try to separate the work and the music, but sometimes it gets intertwined. But
I bet.
I haven't invited really anyone in to share the experience other than video people or music people. So
do you ride a tractor too?
Pardon me?
Do you ride tractor as well?
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, I drive tractor all the time. Yeah.
You ever recorded in the tractor? It's closed in? You could
the thing is, it is, but tractors, as modern as they are these days, they're still very noisy.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's a lot of tractor noise. So yeah, but I get where I try to sing everywhere for sure.
Yeah, it's you'd have to sing different music than the sort of acoustic, spooky sounding tunes. If you're in the tractor, you might have to switch to hard rock or something, Zachary, I think.
Yeah,
so we can
I
hear it.
might have to. I agree.
Are you still a farmer who does some music, or are you now leaning more into the musical side of what you've been doing?
Yeah, no, I'm still a farmer. I have run up like a full farm with my dad, grain farm down here in the Morden area, and it's I still would say I'm more a farmer than musician at this point, but I'm definitely looking to do more music stuff, and not that I want to quit farming, but I'd like to do both and see how far I can take this music thing for sure.
Do you have plans for what's next for you as a musician already? Or are you going to see how today's release goes?
See how today's release goes. And also I'm working on an EP and I just put out a song about a month ago called Hate Loving You This Way. I've got 3 songs out, originals, and just put this cover out today. And I'm working on an EP that's going to come out this spring.
Well, people can watch for you. Should they be checking you out on TikTok?
TikTok, Instagram. My name is Just Zachary, Zakkery. Check me out there, and more music coming soon.
Well, let's hear more of the tune, and thanks for being up early and talking to us. I have to say, I always your musician side probably likes to stay up late, but your farmer side's probably up early all the time. So I love that you were with us this early in the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Marcy.
So that's Zachary on with us live via Zoom. I mentioned I was going to talk less with him, and so we can hear more of the music. So he's a grain farmer in the arm of Stanley out in Morden. He said the Morden area. His cover of Bon Iver's Rosalind's out now. Today is the day. Let's hear it.
See on the rocks below, look to the undertow. Bones burning teeth below, fury crashing below.
Recorded in a silo in southern Manitoba, Zachary, a grain farmer in the arm of Stanley. That's his cover of Bon Iver's Rosalind, and it is officially out now. That is a fun story to start our Friday morning show. Well, guess what, folks? We got another one coming up next, because tomorrow, Birds Canada kicks off its Christmas bird count. It's an annual event. It goes till January 5th. It relies on enthusiastic birders. Now, this event's been running for 125 years. And to talk more about it, Jody Allaire's up early as well, and with us also via Zoom, Director of Communications at Birds Canada. Good morning.
Good morning.
So 125 years. How does the bird count work for people that haven't been paying attention?
Yeah, so it's a really pretty fun tradition, and it works simply as they're all sort of towns across North America, major cities have a count circle. And this is run every year by a compiler and volunteers. And the circle is about a 24-kilometer diameter circle. And groups of volunteers go out and count every individual, every species on a single day. And it gives you this great snapshot of the abundance and diversity of birds on that day. And the best thing about this is, it's just a great, super fun tradition. It's always a highlight on the birding calendar, but it's open to everyone to participate. And doing this year after year, decade after decade, you get a really great data set so that we can monitor, the population changes and trends of Canada's birds.
Where's the circle drawn in Manitoba? Do you know? I know I think there's over 400 circles. So that might be a tough question, but what's the geographic area you look at in our province?
Yeah, so it's really up to whatever a local naturalist club or a local compiler, wherever they want to put it, and then it sort of stays in that same place, right? So there's one sort of dead set on Winnipeg, and there are sort of spread out across Manitoba. And if you actually want to see all the count sites, when the dates are of the counts over the next couple of weeks, and the compilers to reach out to join, all you got to do is go to our website, birdscanada.org/CBC, and there's a map there, an interactive map where you can actually see all the counts and when they're happening.
So who was it 125 years ago that said, "Hey, Canada, let's count birds"?
Yeah, well, this program is actually a joint program, Birds Canada and a U.S. partner, National Audubon Society. So we manage the program here in Canada. Audubon runs the program in the U.S., but we work together on it. And so it was Frank Chapman back in 1900. And it was really, he came up with this as an alternative to the Christmas side hunt, which was this event where basically people went out on Christmas and shot as many birds as they possibly could. And the winner was the person who killed the most. And he saw that, species were already declining at that time. So he came up with the idea, why don't we just count the birds instead? So that first year, there were 25 counts involving 27 people, but 2 of them were in Canada, and one in Toronto and one in Scotch Bay, New Brunswick. So Canada has been sort of right at the start of this initiative.
The data is used by scientists. I'm wondering, as we come to the end of this year, 2024, what stood out to you, in terms of bird data or patterns for this year?
Yeah, well, last year was really interesting because it was an El Nino, and because of that, there were a lot of species. Like we had 293 species, in fact, recorded in Canada last year, and that's 13 more than the previous years. So, and because of the warm weather, birds were actually staying up north. There were a lot of much more waterfowl staying north. And this is sort of a trend we're starting to see now, especially the last decade or so. We're getting more birds wintering further north into Canada. So just as an example of some of the interesting snapshots from last year.
I love that you brought that up because there's been people on my local Facebook group page that have been posting birds in Manitoba, and a lot of people are commenting, "I've never seen that before, and I didn't know those, inhabited our province and such." So once again, why don't you leave us with the website, Jody, before we go? So if people want to take part or learn more, they can do that.
Yeah, so the website is birdscanada.org/CBC, and if you don't have any bird experience, absolutely, you're more than welcome. This is an open, inclusive event, and we'd love to have you join us.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Okay, take care.
You too. That is Birds Canada doing its Christmas bird count, and it kicks off tomorrow. I've been in conversation here with Jody Allaire, who's the Director of Communications at Birds Canada. Right now, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's minus 22 right now, and who doesn't like Friday the 13th in Winnipeg when it comes without any weather warnings? Mix of sun and clouds, a bit of a wind though, south 30 gusting to 50. That's going to warm us up, believe it or not, to a high today of minus 13 and warmer for the weekend. Monthly property installments, tax installments in Winnipeg are going up about 50% for most homes in January. Most of this has nothing to do with city tax hikes. As CBC's Bartley Kivas tells us, changes to provincial education tax rebates have caused monthly tax payments to yo-yo down and then back up.
I think
Lori Penner owns a home in southwest Winnipeg. She just found out via email her monthly property tax payment is going up, way up, in January.
You can't tell people with 2 weeks to go that they have to completely change their budget for the next year ahead.
The increase is due to a rebound in education tax. A provincial tax rebate was applied from July to December. That made monthly property tax payments unusually low during the last 6 months of 2024. Winnipeg, which collects both municipal and provincial property taxes, is now struggling to communicate monthly payments are going up. Tim Austin is the city's taxation director.
In a normal non-Canada Post-strike year, we would send out tip letters in the start of December to advise people what their January 1st payment would be.
Taxes on most Winnipeg properties will rise one more time next year. The full extent of city and school board tax hikes will be applied on July 1st. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The GST, you can read more about this tax yo-yo, property taxes on our website this morning. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, some small business owners in this province say the federal government's GST holiday is more like the nightmare before Christmas. Starting tomorrow, the federal tax will be taken off a wide range of goods and services, including restaurant meals, beverages, and toys. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau touting it as a way to make life more affordable for Canadians. But David Newsom at Hildegard's Bakery in Winnipeg says he is working overtime to go through his inventory and change his menus and his signage.
It comes out of small business owners' sleep, basically. Like, we're all going to have to do it, but I can't imagine that there's anyone who actually thinks this is a good idea.
The GST break will run for 2 months until February 15th. The number of homicides in Manitoba last year dropped to its lowest point since 2019. In a new report, Stats Canada says 74 people died by homicide last year in this province. However, criminologists agree poverty levels are still driving up Manitoba's homicide rates to the highest among all Canadian provinces. Frank Cormier is a criminology professor at the University of Manitoba.
In difficult economic times, or in provinces maybe that are, in less good financial situations, you will see more alcohol and drug use and abuse, which is very closely correlated to crimes like homicides.
Nationally, the number of homicides hit its lowest point since 2020. Stats Canada says the drop is in part to a reduction in deaths related to gang and intimate partner violence. Winnipeg's community drop-off composting program has exploded in popularity. Bins were set up at 15 sites across the city in October. Carrie Blackburn at Compost Winnipeg says the amount of organic waste dropped off is triple than they expected. She says it started right after Halloween when people were unloading their pumpkins.
That just kind of put composting into people's hands, realizing where the drop-offs were, and then they were just basically translating that behavior from just a pumpkin to household weekly waste. And so we've just seen the program blow up. It's been very successful.
Blackburn says they have added more bins and are collecting more than once a week where necessary. 40 tons of organics have been diverted from the landfill. The group now is in talks with the city about how to expand with more drop-off sites. Curbside composting in Winnipeg is still 5 years away. The Christmas Cheer Board is asking for help to make the season brighter for thousands of Winnipeggers. Cheer's Executive Director Shauna Bell says they still have more than 10,000 hampers in their warehouse that need to be delivered to people in need.
We're hopeful that drivers will come out and help us get those hamper packages into those folks' hands so that they can have a nice holiday season.
Bell says anyone with a vehicle and some spare time can drop by the warehouse at 895 Century. First to score.
Shoots, rebound, Chebrikov scores!
Nikita Chibrikov in the first period on TSN, putting the Jets on the board ahead of the Vegas Golden Knights. But the Knights come back, first tying the game and then taking it in overtime, 3-2 the final. It is the Jets' 8th straight loss to the Golden Knights. Jets coach Scott Arniel says Vegas was on the attack.
Teams like Vegas, they don't let you just come inside easily. It's hard to get in there, and so you need to take the shots to break down that sort of coverage that they're throwing at you and get them to spread themselves out. And I didn't think we did enough of that in the first two periods.
The Jets close out their home stint tomorrow against the Montreal Canadiens. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather Wells, did you see the pictures yesterday of the Portage and Main barricades? The first picture started coming out, right, of them taking them down?
Yes, it's different, right?
Right. Corey and I yesterday were talking about trying to, get a piece of it to sell.
Oh, my goodness.
So I don't know if we get in trouble if we just sort of went down there and took little clear bottles, like one of those kind that you would put like a little ship in, those kind of display bottles. Yeah, I kind of want to do that. But
it is a little piece of history, right?
I know. We're all too recognizable, though, so we have to send someone else that no one knows to sneak.
Kind of a condition this morning. It's frigid out there. It's cold, except you have the right tools. It's still well below minus 20s across the province. We're looking at temperatures around minus 22 right now in Winnipeg. We should see sunshine today. That would transition to a mix of sun and clouds. The highs would get to minus 13, though with wind chill factored in, it's going to feel like minus 35 this morning. So there's still a risk of frostbite if you will be spending time outside. In Western Manitoba, Brandon is sitting at minus 23, partly cloudy conditions you're seeing. This would stay with you for most of the day. Then you will see light snow here and there. The high would only get to minus 14. The wind chill makes it feel like minus 37. The same condition for the South Central and Pembina Valley regions. We're looking at temperatures around minus 22, though that region will see sunny conditions and the wind chill is going to be around minus 35. The Parkland region is seeing temperatures around minus 28 in Dauphin at this time. It's chilly there. You're going to see some clouds roll in. There's a chance of a light snow today. Highs would get to minus 13. The wind chill sits around minus 36. Gimli is at a minus 25 at this time. The Interlake region will see sunshine, then a transition to a mix of sun and clouds. Highs will be around minus 14, though the wind chill will still be staying around at minus 35, 36, so you may want to stay warm today. For the Pamphlet Flum, we're looking at temperatures around minus 18. Cloudy conditions we're seeing. Light snow expected today. Highs around minus 15. Wind chill in the values of minus 30, so you want to protect your skin from cold. Up north, we're seeing Thompson at minus 30 with cloudy conditions. Some clouds will roll in. Light snow would come. Highs around minus 16. The wind chill around minus 42. It's chilly there. Churchill is at a minus 20. Cloudy conditions, and then snow is expected later for that region. The wind chill is going to be around minus 33 this morning, and then that snow continues tonight. Overall, chilly day across the province with cold temperatures well below freezing point, and be cautious of frostbites throughout the province. In Winnipeg, we're going to see sunshine today, but it's not the sunshine that would warm you up. Maybe for the weekend, yes, it will.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And back to Corey now. Let's find out about traffic.
Yeah, I'm in traffic mode now. And actually, there's not a ton actually to report out there. It seems like it's been pretty quiet so far this morning. Let's hope it stays that way. But if it's not, give me a call on the CBC commuter line if you're walking, biking, driving. I can tell you those sidewalks are actually looking pretty nice right now, pretty grippy. Bike lanes also seem to be actually fairly plowed. But if that's not the case for you, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks very much, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, we want to open the phone lines here. As we've been hearing in the news, we've got changes to taxation coming. We're not talking about property tax increases as was in the city draft budget this week. That is one thing. But this is about January and your tax payments, your tip going up by 50%. And Heather was explaining in the news about that. We'll hear more after 7, by the way. But we're wondering what your thoughts are right now with all this coming at you as a homeowner in the city. You can always weigh in this morning at 788-3205. As I mentioned, we'll have some more analysis coming up. Right now, speaking of budgets, let's find out how Canadians are faring financially overall at this time of the year. Crystalie Ramlakan is here with our business news. Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So what's the answer to that?
Yeah, well, you know what? The amount that households owe relative to their income fell in the third quarter as a rise in disposable income actually outpaced the growth of debt. Now, that's according to Statistics Canada. It's the sixth quarter in a row that measure has declined, but the numbers are still up there. Even though the ratio of credit market debt as a proportion of household disposable income fell from 175% in the second quarter, it's still at 173%. So in other words, there was $1.73 in debt for every dollar of disposable income. So that's because debt payments rose slightly, 0.2%, but disposable income has gained 2%.
Let's look at another story this morning. This one's back to airlines. Air Canada's CEO will face questions today, actually, about the carry-on baggage fees that they recently announced. What are the details, other details, rather, can you tell us about this?
So Chief Executive Mike Rousseau is set to address a parliamentary committee today. Last week, the carrier announced it's going to charge for carry-ons for its lowest priced fares for North American and Caribbean routes starting soon, January 3rd. Now, lawmakers both here in Canada and the United States have criticized airlines in recent weeks for additional fees on luggage and seat assignments. And there's also been an outpouring of anger and frustration from passengers on social media. Now, analysts say revenue earned from charges such as baggage fees have become a mainstay of the airline business worldwide. Revenue from these kinds of fees is estimated to jump 26% from last year to $148 billion this year. Now, Rousseau will speak by video conference, and he will be joined by other airline executives. WestJet has a similar policy to the one that Air Canada recently announced, and its CEO is also set to appear. Now, Air Canada, though, says the changes bring its basic fare structure in line with the industry standard. Passengers will be able to bring a small personal item like a purse, but anything larger like a duffel bag will have to be checked for $35. So earlier this month, a group of U.S. senators called out rising airline fees following testimony from airline executives. And last month, a Senate subcommittee report found that U.S. airlines have generated billions of dollars in revenue by charging extra for seat assignments and luggage.
If you want to get people upset, start remeasuring what they're bringing on the plane, right? This is going to be a big issue in the new year.
Yeah.
And finally, before we look at the numbers here, why are shares of media and entertainment conglomerate Warner Brothers Discovery surging?
Yeah, well, that's because yesterday the company announced a restructuring plan to segment its businesses into two different units, linear and streaming. So this move could also simplify future consolidation. So the linear division will house news, sports, scripted and unscripted programming such as CNN, HGTV, and the Food Network. And the streaming unit will house the company's film studios and streaming platform Max. Now, longtime TV powerhouse HBO will also be slotted under the streaming unit. And this comes after Comcast also announced it would spin out its cable networks, including CNBC, MSNBC, and E! Now, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery says the company will ensure that the linear business is well positioned to drive cash flow, while the streaming and studios business focuses on driving growth by telling the world's most compelling stories. And this restructuring is expected to be completed by the middle of next year.
How are markets looking this morning then?
In Europe, markets are lower as investors react to disappointing data from two of the region's largest economies. But right now, Germany, the UK, and France are all still slightly up. In Asia, stocks are down. Japan is down. Shanghai is down. Hong Kong is down. Oil is up 56 cents to $70.58 US per barrel. Gold is down $10.50 to $2,669.80 US per ounce, and the dollar's just slightly down 0.01 of a cent, and it's sitting at 70.3 cents US.
All right, Crystal Lee, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
That's Crystal Lee Ramlich, and she joins us every morning on the show with business news. 6:45 a.m. Friday morning, CBC here. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app, on YouTube. We're everywhere. You are wherever you need to be this Friday morning. Hopefully you're warm and looking forward to the day because our high today is going to be minus 13. Woo! That's nearly normal. We haven't had that for a couple of days. Be aware, wind chill's still going to make it feel like minus 35. Right now, though, it is clear, minus 22. Brandon's mostly cloudy, minus 23. Thompson's mainly clear, minus 30. We're talking in the newsroom about how we're so Manitoba when we're like, oh, right, it's only minus 22 today. That's pretty good. Next on the show, let's talk about composting. You might have heard Heather mentioning in the news that there's a new compost program and people seem to be liking it. Since Compost Winnipeg set up compost bins at 15 sites across the city just in October, Winnipeggers have been doing their best to fill them up. Carrie Blackburn at Compost Winnipeg spoke with CBC's Susan Magus about how well the program's being received.
Incredibly successful. There's a reason we've been kind of a little bit silent on its success, is because we're so busy. We've been just trying to keep up with the demand. So introducing more bins, booking unscheduled collections. So we tried to have it on a weekly basis, the collections, but it's been so popular that we've had to go 2, sometimes 3 times per week.
If you were to categorize how it, percentage-wise, how much it's grown, or volume-wise, how would you characterize it that way?
So far we've diverted 40,000 kilograms of organics through the program. So each week it's grown considerably over the next. And it was kind of an interesting time when the program rolled out too, because it was pumpkin composting season. So we did have our general drop-offs for the pumpkins. So that was kept mostly as a part of its own situation. But we did notice an increase in volume because of pumpkins kind of right after Halloween and for about a month or so. But what we found is that just kind of put composting into people's hands, realizing where the drop-offs were, and then they were just basically translating that behavior from just a pumpkin to household weekly waste. And so we've just seen the program blow up. It's been very successful. When the program was rolling out, we weren't quite sure how that was going to affect things. And we had a lot of pumpkins, but we were pleased to see that it wasn't just pumpkins. You know, it was people bringing food waste and their pumpkins. So it wasn't just like a one-off. It really was people introducing better waste management practice into their households.
So once the pumpkin rush was over, for lack of a better term, how has it been since then? Has it dropped a bit, or has it kept at that level?
It's actually kept at that level. So we finally found that kind of equilibrium, that balance between how many bins we need at the site to be able to do the one collection per week, and each week we're right at the brim of the bin. So it's exceptional. We're not going there for partially filled bins. We're going there for a worthwhile content.
So are you still even now doing more than one pickup a week?
At some locations, Dakota in particular has been a very popular site. It's just a high traffic location with the Dakota Community Center and everything. So we just found it to be very, very popular. So we have 7 bins there and do 2 collections per week currently.
And have you increased the number of bins at every other drop-off location?
At most other locations as well, yeah. So Roblin Park comes to mind, Sturgeon Heights, Sir John Franklin, which is the Corden Community Center, and also Lindenwoods, that's the other one. Okay. Garden City is another one that's busy.
What happens if it becomes even more popular? What would be your next move?
Just introducing perhaps another bin, and we're definitely in talks with the city to see how we can expand this program and really ensure it meets the needs of the community. They too are blown away by the popularity of the program and how well it's been received by Winnipeggers.
Carrie Blackburn in conversation there with the CBC's Susan Magus. She's from Compost Winnipeg, not Susan, but Carrie is. And they're talking about how well this composting program's been received. It was just set up in October at 15 sites. They're already, as you heard, talking about possible expansion. Are you one of the people using it? Why? How does it work for you? How's it improved your life? Why do you compost? 788-3205. It is minus 22 in the city, and let's talk about the Canada Post work stoppage and strike. It's nearing the 4-week mark now, and a lot of people are wondering if or when the federal government may step in. Now, that's because Ottawa's sideline approach so far stands in contrast to their intervention in August railway and November's port work stoppages. To talk about this, Stephen Tufts was with us for this perspective. He's Associate Professor and studies labor geography at York University. Good morning.
Good morning.
So with the railway and port labor disputes this year, we did see the Fed step in relatively swiftly. And in the past, they've stepped in on Canada Post, if I recall correctly. I hope I'm recalling that correctly. But what is different, with this Canada Post situation? What is making the Feds hold off in your view?
Well, I think there's three things we have to consider here. First, in the case of the East and West ports, the port employers or the port companies asked the government to intervene right away. Secondly, is that the port is the gateway to the Canadian economy. That's how many goods circulate from east to west. And it's throughout Canada, and had a pretty immediate impact, especially during harvest season. But mail has changed over the last decade, and even though we still deliver, postal workers deliver about 2 billion pieces of mail a year, that's about a 50% decline over the last decade. And I think another point is that we're in an election cycle, and unions don't like to be legislated back to work. We have constitutional and charter right protected freedoms of association to collective bargain. And when governments intervene, that's not a way to gain union support. And I think both Trudeau and Singh are trying to court unions, and even the Conservatives have. Although yesterday, Pierre Poilievre made the switch, and he's now calling for the government to intervene and end the strike.
Just for context for people to understand how these things work, they may be wondering, you see other companies asking the federal government to intervene. Why wouldn't Canada Post be doing that right now?
Well, this is interesting, and I think there's a couple of things here. One is that Canada Post is facing a lot of changes and wants to make a significant changes to its collective agreement so it can restructure and deliver different services or extend parcel delivery, for example, to the weekends. And that requires a lot of cooperation and changes to the collective agreement with the union, and that's not easily obtained in arbitration. Arbitration is better at maybe determining what a wage increase should be by looking around to what other workers in the economy are getting. And workers have done quite well over the last 18 months, getting 18, 20% over 4 years. Canada Post wants to pay postal workers about half of that increase. So it may be hesitant to go to arbitration, afraid that an arbitrator might be overly generous.
I was just looking up the stat. Actually, I should correctly give credit where credit's due. Corey was just looking up the stat. So we were recalling in 2018, the federal government did use back to work legislation for Canada Post. So does some of this, the different opinion, the different thinking around it now have to do with, we were talking about this in the show yesterday, actually, or 2 days ago, have to do with the fact that the people are questioning whether or not Canada Post is still an essential service?
Yeah, I mean, we know that I don't think that Canada Post is an essential service. I don't think postal workers are essential service. In labor relations, that's a very, very narrowly defined category, usually used to define workers, and it's defined in legislation, who don't have the right to strike, who have to go to arbitration, police officers, fire service workers, ambulance drivers, and military workers, where if there was a work stoppage, life would be in peril. That's not the case with Canada Post workers. Yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, their work is important. Yes, a lot of small businesses depend on the Postal Service, but at the same time, it's not in peril if a Christmas card doesn't arrive on time.
So has there been a shift in the last 6 years, would you say, in terms of how the Postal Service is viewed?
I do think so. I think a couple of things have happened. One is that Canada Post isn't always a popular company. A lot of crown corporations have in some public relations issues. And I think a lot of folks aren't as dependent on the post office. Some are, but it's unevenly so. So the broader public probably, isn't really thinking that or experiencing not getting a check on time or not getting a magazine subscription on time because everything's digital. And I think that makes it a little less leverage for postal workers in some ways than they had in the past.
What are you going to be watching for as this continues?
Well, I think that all strikes come to an end, either through negotiation or, in this case, maybe legislation or some kind of ministerial order with Section 107, which the government has used recently. But we'll see if there is a change in perception by the public. Right now, I think the public is relatively quite supportive of the postal workers compared to the past, where CUPW has had, really struggled sometimes to gain public support. But I think this time it's a little bit different. But will there be a shift, as we saw yesterday with Pierre Poilievre very publicly calling for an end to the strike, and we'll see if any momentum shifts the other way.
Thanks so much for your analysis and point of view, Stephen. Appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me.
That is Stephen Tufts, an associate professor in studies labor geography at York University, talking about what's going on with the Canada Post strike now in its fourth week. It is 3 minutes now to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Let's get to Heather Wells, who is live with us this morning from our news department with your headlines.
Good morning. And the city's taxation director says it is that Canada Post strike that made it tough to let property owners. Their monthly installments are going up starting in January. Thousands of Winnipeg homeowners just finding out their property tax installments will rise about 50% in January. Most of that increase has nothing to do with the city tax hike. We'll tell you what it's all about coming up as well. Some Manitoba small business owners say the federal government's GST holiday is more like a nightmare before Christmas. That GST holiday kicks in on Saturday, tomorrow, and businesses are scrambling to get ready. We'll hear more in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
In the forecast today, more normal conditions in terms of the daytime high, a high of -13. Be careful, though, because with wind chill and exposed skin, it'll still feel like -35. So bundle up. We'll have lots of nice sunshine for us, and winds will be 30, gusting to 50. You know what that feels like. In the winter, that wind kind of ruins the party, right? Right now, it's clear. It's -22. If you need us in traffic, 788-3093. Call Corey with anything that's developing and an issue on your route. In the next hour of the show, the Christmas Cheer Board is in need of a, Christmas miracle. They have more than 10,000 hampers that need to be delivered. They do not have enough drivers, as you may have heard in the news. So we're going to update and expand on that story a little bit and find out more about, if you can drive, where, what's the time commitment, all of those details. In addition, in the next hour of the show, she was honored for preserving the Ojibwe language. We're going to talk with an Order of Canada recipient. She received it yesterday, about what it means to see Indigenous youth in Manitoba learning Anishinaabe-Moan. She's been at the ground floor of teaching it and preserving the language. So what an honor. We're going to talk to Patricia Ningwantz. And at 7:50 this morning, the City of Winnipeg revealed next year's budget this week, and missing in it was funding for a downtown social services center. That community hub, was at the library. So we're going to get reaction to that from someone who was not impressed with that decision. So stay tuned. That's all still ahead in a busy Friday morning show, but right now it's time for World Report.
Today on The Current.
The pages are stuck together. She made half an English trifle and half a shepherd's pie.
A perfect cake, easy rack of lamb, colorful winter salad. Cookbooks are a lovely place to find kitchen inspiration, and our panel of recipe aficionados is here with their top cookbooks of the year. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. It's now official. Tomorrow marks the beginning of the Liberal government's GST-HST holiday after the legislation received royal assent last night. Business reporter Scott Peterson is here to break it all down for us. Scott.
John, well, we know a couple of things. We know that it starts tomorrow. We know this is generally sort of focused on younger families with children to give them a little bit of breathing room as we head towards this holiday season. But depending on where people are, this could be a break of anywhere between 5 and 15%. For example, in Ontario, that's got the PST wrapped in with the GST, that old HST could be up to 15%. So these are substantial savings for people out there. And the list is complicated. For more details, go to cbcnews.ca. But food and groceries, for example, all now non-alcoholic beverages at the grocery stores, alcoholic beverages below 23%. So there's a list of items here, and it's very hit and miss as far as what's included, what is not. So people are advised to look at these lists before they go out and shopping if this is their goal. Also, to mention as well, this is expected to cost the government at provincial and federal levels up to about $2.7 billion for this 2-month tax break.
Now, we know that running a business at the best of times is a challenge, so presumably administering this is going to be a challenge for some businesses.
Yeah, you could even say a nightmare. Some businesses are very worried at the prospect of having to change over a whole multitude of things at the cash register for the next 2 months. But at the same time, any tax break is a good tax break. It gets people out in the stores. This is the idea behind this. But there is going to be some trepidation by business owners as far as how to implement this, the costs associated with getting an accountant, for example, or anybody having to change the machinery that collects the tax. But still, they're optimistic that this is going to increase sales, and this is a very important time of the year for retailers out in Canada as far as their margins go, and this is an important time of the year.
Business reporter Scott Peterson walking us through it all. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, John.
The head of Air Canada is one of 4 airline CEOs appearing before a House of Commons committee today. They're facing questions about carry-on baggage fees. Air Canada says it will begin charging passengers on its cheapest flights. It all comes as we learn that Ottawa has sold its Air Canada shares at a profit. And for more on all of this, the CBC's Janice McGregor joins us now from our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what do we know so far?
John, like many international carriers, Air Canada was in dire straits during the pandemic. And by April of 2021, the federal government had to step in with a massive $5.9 billion loan package. And at the time, it also purchased about $500 million worth of shares, giving it about a 6% stake in what's otherwise a private airline. But this was never intended to be a long-term investment. And contrary to 3 years ago, the airline industry now is doing quite well. And Air Canada shares are on the upswing. So, Globe Mail is reporting that the federal shares were sold in 2 transactions this week on Wednesday and Thursday. The Finance Department and Air Canada have yet to issue statements officially confirming the sales. We don't know exactly how much the taxpayer made on this, but the feds bought shares when the price was just over $23, and Air Canada shares now are up over $25. So the original $500 million investment plus a tidy profit, that's now available to put against this year's deficit. Chrystia Freeland is expected to release the public accounts for this year on Monday. We'll see to what degree this profitable transaction helps the federal books in a fall economic update that's otherwise expected to feature a lot of red ink.
Okay, so back to Air Canada, Janice. If the carrier is making money again, why are they squeezing their passengers with bag fees?
Yeah, that's exactly the question MPs want to ask. When Air Canada announced on December 4th that passengers paying its basic economy fare are going to have to pay $35 for their carry-on, well, that sparked a fresh round of grumpiness from passengers fed up with being nickeled and dimed as airlines compete with fares that aren't really as low as they first seem once you tack on all the fees. Transport Minister Anita Anand has also said she's disappointed to see the airlines squeezing passengers at a difficult time for a lot of households. She wants to talk to the airlines, too, to understand their decisions. Look, these are private companies, but this is a federally regulated industry. And it is good politics to side with consumers.
CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
Ukraine says nearly 300 Russian missiles and drones targeted the country's energy infrastructure this morning. It's the latest of a dozen attacks against Ukraine's power grid this year. Russia says the strikes were in response to Ukraine using American-made missiles to hit targets in Russia. Briar Stewart has the story.
Inside a metro station in Kyiv, residents sit bundled in their winter coats, looking at their phones for updates on the latest missile and drone attack, which has sent some families underground. Every night my child is constantly frightened, said one mother. Ukraine's president says Russia launched 93 missiles and nearly 200 drones at sites across the country on Friday morning. He said most of the missiles were shot down. There are few details on the impact of the attacks, but officials say some equipment at thermal power plants were damaged and rolling power cuts were introduced as a result. Russia's aerial attack comes as it continues to try to push forward in southeastern Ukraine near the strategic hub of Pokrovsk. While in the north, Ukraine believes that Moscow is likely trying to recapture hundreds of square kilometers of territory in Russia's Kursk region ahead of January 20th, when U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is inaugurated. Trump has repeatedly vowed to quickly end the war after taking office.
So it's slightly irrelevant to us on the ground.
This soldier, who asked CBC News to only be identified by his call sign Voodoo, is a Brit who's been fighting for Ukraine for 6 months. He's been in the Kursk area throughout the fall.
And whatever happens, we'll be here until the end.
Half of a dozen Ukrainian soldiers based in Kursk have told CBC News that they've been ordered to hold the line and that they have a hard time envisioning just what kind of deal Trump could broker, given that the Kremlin says it's not willing to make any concessions when it comes to Ukraine. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Large rallies are happening across Syria celebrating the end of 5 decades of authoritarian rule by the Assad regime. Today, the first Friday prayers since last weekend's overthrow of President Bashar al-Assad. Crowds swarm the interim prime minister as he arrives for prayers at a mosque in Damascus. Huge crowds are turning out there and in other cities across the country. Freelance reporter Nur Ormush is in Idlib.
Thousands of Syrians are now gathering in the main square in the city of Idlib, celebrating the fall of the Assad regime. And the first Friday after the fall of the Assad regime here in Idlib, in the main square in Idlib city in Syria. And of course, we've talked to many people here in this demonstration as they told us that they're finally now gathering in this square without fear of the Assad regime or planes hovering over the skies of Idlib and targeting these peaceful demonstrations. And of course, these demonstrations are in celebration and in memory to the 2011 uprising of Syrian people against the Assad regime forces. And also people here are talking about how they are going to build a new Syria, a free Syria for all Syrians after the continuous attempts of the Assad regime to destroy the Syrian community cohesion. And now they say that they're committing to build a free Syria to all Syrians without any religious or sectarian separations. And now the joy is actually massive in the faces of the Syrian people after the fall of the Assad regime. Now, Kormosh for CBC News from Syria.
Finally, Donald Trump's former national security advisor has a message for Canada. Brace for more ridicule and threats as Trump returns to the White House. John Bolton also has some tips for Justin Trudeau. He spoke with the CBC's Katie Simpson.
I think Trump gets a laugh from it. I think it's that simple.
John Bolton says Donald Trump is revealing his true self when he cracks jokes about Canada and makes references to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as a governor. Bolton knows how the president-elect thinks. While he's a critic now, he once served as Trump's national security advisor. Bolton says the best way for Canada to avoid Trump's tariff threat is to play into the president-elect's ego.
Make the case why not invoking the tariffs will help Trump. What makes Donald Trump look good?
And he says Trudeau should avoid weighing in on domestic U.S. politics. Surprised to learn the Prime Minister suggested women's rights suffered a setback when Kamala Harris lost the election. Bolton says on top of meeting Trump's demands to improve border security, Canada could head off some of his complaints by stepping up its defense spending and taking on more responsibility on the world stage. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, if you're looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, cbckidsnews.ca, cbckidsnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Welcome to Friday, everyone, and good morning. It is minus 22. I'm RC Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Thanks for being with us. So did you get the email? I know I got the email. Winnipeg property owners got an email saying property tax payments in January are going up by about 50%. That probably got your attention. Maybe you thought it was spam. It is not. We're going to hear from the city and the province and a homeowner who says, what? That's coming up this half hour on the program. So we'll get through those details for you so we can understand financially what this is about. Also this hour on the program, we're going to hear how the Christmas Cheer Board is in urgent, they say, need of drivers to deliver the thousands of hampers that they have for Christmas this year. We're going to talk to an Order of Manitoba recipient who was in Ottawa yesterday about being honored. And we're going to hear about funding missing in the downtown, in the budget for a downtown social services center. At least we'll hear from one advocate who says that was sorely missing when the city announced its draft budget. So we have a lot of stories we're going to cover for you this hour. And even more, because Heather Wells is in with the news now in our headlines. Hi there.
Hi there. Well, some Manitoba small business owners say the federal government's GST holiday that begins tomorrow is more like the nightmare before Christmas. The federal tax is going to be taken off a wide range of goods and services. David Newsom at Hildegard's Bakery says he's working overtime to go through his inventory, change his menus and all of his signs. We're going to hear more coming up. And it seems Winnipeggers want to compost. In the 2 months since 15 drop-off sites opened, demand has tripled. Compost Winnipeg's Carrie Blackburn met with city officials last week.
Wow, this is way more successful than we thought it was going to be.
Blackburn says they're in talks now with the city about opening even more sites. We'll have more news on that coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, let's have a brief look at the weather today now, which is a little bit more normal when it comes to the daytime high, Abby.
Yep, frigid region staying below minus 20, and it's even going to feel colder with the wind chill in the range of minus 35s and even close to minus 42 in the northern part of the province. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at minus 22. We will see a sunny day ahead and then the transition to a mix of sun and clouds. We warm up to minus 13, but the wind chill still makes it feel in that range of the minus 30. So you want to take care out there.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
With the commute news, here's Corey.
Yeah, heard from Anne on the commuter line. She says on westbound Jubilee, just before Riverside, for the past couple of days, actually, there's been a illegally parked van with a trailer behind it that's just kind of been holding things up. So as traffic picks up, you lose your right lane there, essentially, and then you got to keep going around there. So might be some backups on Jubilee, which is known to back up pretty easily. Keep left there. Also got a call from Dan on a bike just saying how nice it is to see so many people still biking in this weather. He's out and about, usually hitting the rapid transit, and he just sees a lot of other folks biking more than usual. So that's kind of a neat little observation from Dan. Congrats to everyone who bundled up and is out there riding this morning. If you see anything else going on out there on the highways, on the roads, bike lanes, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, if you are out and about, you might have be spotting something beautiful. Susan Carroll's did. We're going to put a picture up here in our YouTube stream of the show. Look at this. This is our province showing off. So we've got Susan Carroll's Road, and this is the moon setting over Lake Manitoba early this morning. She sent this gorgeous photo in. It really captures the stillness and the cold of winter in my mind. It's just this, Corey, can you sit down? Corey's in the control room. Sometimes when he stands, I can't see the picture, but now I can. It's just this beautiful clear sky, and then the stars are in the sky. You can just see that. The moon is just this glowing ball of orange. You just see it right over the horizon of the lake as it's going down with the icy lake beneath. So just gorgeous. Let that be an enticement for you to check out our YouTube stream of the show, which is streamed every morning now from Information Radio. You can check it out. It is time now, 7:14 a.m. Well, let's talk about your money now. If you're a homeowner and you got an email from the city saying that your January property tax payment is going to be 50% more, you're not alone. In short, this is due to a misalignment of the city and province's taxation efforts. North Kildonan City Councillor Jeff Bruwadi says the province is to blame.
Most people didn't really notice when the amount went down, and they certainly didn't complain when the payments went down in July. What's going to happen, again, because of the way the province handled this, everyone's going to go up in January. It has nothing to do with the city and this budget that's just been introduced. It has not passed. It's not set in stone yet. It hasn't been voted on. But it has all to do with the way that's being handled.
And now let's hear from the province. So this is Manitoba Finance Minister Adrian Sala.
Well, what I can say is that our $1,500 homeowner affordability tax credit will save the vast majority of Winnipeggers and Manitobans money. I think here what we're seeing is some misalignment between our calendar years as a province and the city. But I'm very confident that our measure is going to save Manitobans money.
Now, most people paying this, of course, probably aren't really as interested in how this all misalignment, as they're saying, happened. They are interested, though, in the fact that they're going to be paying more. That's Lori Penner's point of view. She's one of the homeowners that got this email about the 50% increase that will happen in January. And she spoke to the CBC's Bartley Kivas about what went through her mind when she opened the email.
I think it's ridiculous. I think that it's you can't tell people with 2 weeks to go that they have to completely change their budget for the next year ahead. People aren't prepared for that. Like they had to have known that this was coming, and how can you not prepare people in simple language to make them understand what's going on? You know, it's beyond, to me, it's beyond belief. And to send, in addition to which, I mean, I've got this email right in front of me, and it's in big letters, you should plan to pay 50% more on your January 2025 payment. So in my mind, I read that, and I'm going to be paying 50% more on my taxes, not, whatever amount that the mayor has said that, our taxes are going up by. I mean, 50%, what cities do that? I don't know.
Homeowner Lori Penner. Now, to be clear, this is a one-time, one-month rise. It has nothing to do with the recently announced 5.95% tax hike in the city's draft budget, though that is happening as well. This is Tim Austin, the director of Winnipeg's Assessment and Taxation Department, explaining to CBC's Bartley Kivas what property owners can expect next month in January when it comes to your taxes on property.
So there is a change. January 1st, on average, it's approximately 50% of an increase. So if your tip payment was $100, you'd be looking about $150. That does change. It's an average, so each property is different, and it could be higher or could be a little bit lower than that.
And if I understand things correctly, the properties with the big, a property with a very high assessed value that had a very large tax bill, would see an even larger increase based on what the province has done.
I would expect, based on some analysis that we have done, people with a larger tax bill will see a larger tip payment increase than the average property owner, simply because of the amount of taxes. In addition, the $1,500 homeowners affordability tax credit, which is new for 2025, would be probably less than what a large property would have received in the Manitoba education school tax rebate from last year.
Then what happens on July 1st?
So on July 1st, we know what taxes have actually been billed, and we will adjust the tip payment to ensure that we don't collect any more or any less. So if we collect too much in the first 6 months, January to June, on your tip payments, your tip payment July 1st would decrease. If we're a little light on our estimate, we would expect your tip payments to increase in order to make sure the taxes are paid in full by the end of December.
First of all, you have no Canada Post, but you don't have email addresses for every property owner. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So how do you communicate this?
Yeah, so this year, in a normal non-Canada Post strike year, we would send out tip letters in the start of December to advise people what their January 1st payment would be. In this year, it's been more challenging, definitely. The letters are ready to go. They're waiting to be delivered to Canada Post. We have done advertisements with the local papers. News release was sent out today. We've also communicated through Water and Waste, sending out an email to all the people that signed up for My Utility through their customer service portal to try to get the information out of where people can find their January 1st tip payment.
That's Tim Austin, the director of Winnipeg's Assessment and Taxation Department, explaining all of this to the CBC's Bartley Kivas. Now, you likely want to read more about it and then compare it to your taxes, your tip payment, look at those emails if you got them. Please read more about the story and about how to navigate all of this on our website this morning at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
7:21 a.m. is the time right now on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us. Kevin and Corey and Abby behind the glass this morning. Well, the Christmas Cheerboard of Winnipeg needs help. They're saying, with less than 2 weeks away, with the countdown running, they have thousands of hampers and they need to get them in the hands of Winnipeggers. They do not have enough drivers, though, to make their deliveries this year. So they're saying the need for drivers is urgent. Executive Director Shauna Bell joins us to talk about it. Hi there.
Good morning, Marcy. Thank you so much for having me.
You're more than welcome. So we've been hearing a bit about this in the news. Let's just get into the specific. How many drivers do you need?
Well, last year I think we had about 600 to 700 drivers come throughout the week and a half just before Christmas and just help us out with getting these hampers out. So this year we realized that it's still a week and a half away from Christmas, but when we look at the hamper floor in the warehouse and realize that we haven't yet turned it one complete turn yet, and we got lots more hampers to go out, we really need drivers.
So the more the merrier is what I'm hearing there. What's the time commitment if somebody is listening and they think maybe I could help with this?
We actually don't require a whole lot of time from anyone. Anyone who's interested in just casually coming in and delivering some hampers for us can just show up at the warehouse at 895 Century Street. What we do is we just take a quick peek at their driver license, and then we set them up with some hampers in an area of the city that they'd like to travel to. So it can take as little as a half hour, 45 minutes to, half the day if they like.
And when you deliver the hampers, do people drop them at the door? Do they knock and go in? Like if someone's never done this, they might wonder about the, what's required when you're doing the deliveries.
Absolutely. So what we ask them to do is call ahead. We give them the contact information for the folks that they're delivering to. We ask them to call ahead and just make sure that somebody's home, and then they just have to drop them off at the door.
Is the need all over the city this year? And what can you tell me about that?
It absolutely is. We've got deliveries all the way through to the very back of Transcona, all the way to the top of the north of the city, and even really far into the south. So we've got a lot of different hamper requests that just need fulfilling right now. And while we do have about half of those hamper requests going out the door are pickups, there's folks that just can't get to us for various reasons. And so that we really count on the community to come out and help deliver.
How important are the hampers? I mean, we're talking about toys, and give us a sense of what's in there that people are hoping for.
There's food in those hampers that can extend to the better part of a week for families. So that, I think, is an essential piece, especially with folks having to make some really difficult decisions about what they're purchasing for their household. And then, of course, the gifts are such a very important thing for this time of year. The holidays are just make it very challenging for families, and if you're struggling with how to spend your money, it's those gifts can be a very welcome a welcome gift, as a matter of fact, when they're coming to the door.
What's at stake if you can't make the deliveries? Like, I hate to put that out there. You're just asking for drivers and trying to get ahead of this, but are you already thinking about that?
Well, we have been making some phone calls, and especially to the folks that are coming to pick up, and just reminding them to come and get their hampers. For delivery drivers, if we can't make it happen, we're pretty resourceful. We haven't run into an instance where we haven't been able to deliver them yet, but there's always that risk that we can't. And so we'll just have to look at different opportunities and maybe resulting with some larger scale services to get those hampers out.
How much is the need up this year overall?
I'd say we're probably at about a 10% increase this year. We're looking at around just over 21,000 hampers that'll head out the door. So we've already seen about 3,000 hampers be picked up or delivered, but it's an increase of about 10% from where we were last year.
So once again, Shauna, remind people where they can go if they're listening and saying, you know what, I've got 45 minutes, I can do this.
Absolutely. Please come on down to 895 Century Street. It's between Wellington and Saskatchewan on the east side. And we're open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. till 8 p.m. And Saturday and Sunday, we're open 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we'd love to see folks coming in and helping us out with the deliveries.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marcy. Have a great day.
That's Shauna Bell, Executive Director of the Christmas Cheer Board of Winnipeg, putting out an urgent call. She says they need drivers this year to deliver those hampers. Check it out if you can have some time to help out. It is 7:25 a.m. on 89.3 FM. Time for morning sports. And Scott Regehr joins us now via Zoom. Hello to you.
Happy Friday.
It is, except if you're the Jets. They lost again. They lost to the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, for the 8th regular season matchup in a row, they fell to the Golden Knights, Marcy. It looked like that losing streak might be snapped last night with the Jets holding a 1-goal lead late in the game. But Gabe Vilardi and Dylan DeMello were both called for tripping just over 10 seconds apart. And on the resulting 2-man advantage, Vegas tied things up. Kind of like my tongue. Poor line change in the extra frame led to the game-winning goal for the Knights. Despite the miscommunication, though, DeMello says we shouldn't put too much stock in overtime results.
3-on-3 is a coin flip, right? Like it's essentially glorified pond hockey with some pretty good players on both teams, and all the 3-on-3. Every team in the league, obviously, it's fun to watch and it's great, but it's not hockey, right? I mean, it is what it is. So we were just on the other end of it tonight.
Not hockey. If they'd won in overtime, I wonder what Dylan might have said about it. One bright spot from last night, well, there are a couple, but one that stands out for me. Recent call-up, Nikita Chibrikov, Marcy, once again found the back of the net. He's now done that. In the 3 games in his young career that he's played, he scored in each of them, which sets a new franchise record for goal-scoring streak to start a career. Winnipeg back in action tomorrow. They'll host the Habs, and if you think that's an easy out playing the cellar-dwelling Canadians, consider that the Jets are on a 3-game losing streak against said Habs, so we'll see.
Let's talk swimming. Canadian swimmers continue to enjoy themselves at the Short Course World Championships.
Do they ever? Another big day at the meet yesterday, Marcy. Montreal's Ilya Haroun and Toronto's Summer McIntosh both won gold in the 200-meter butterfly. Haroun set a new national record in his race, while McIntosh set a new world mark in hers. Pretty cool to see them both standing next to each other, beaming as they were awarded their medals at the same time.
As soon as I found out that double podiums were going to be a thing at this meet, I told Ela right away. I was like, we have to get it done for 2 flies, stand both on the top of the podium. So to get that done tonight was really fun.
Medal podium ceremonies are being combined at this meet. World Aquatics experimenting a little bit, trying to move things along more quickly. As it says, some athletes were falling asleep with how long the ceremonies were taking. Remember, many swimmers and coaches have multiple races in the same night. Makes sense to me, just like speeding up the pace in sports like baseball makes sense for both athletes and spectators. It's also refreshing from an appearance standpoint. Good to see men and women celebrating their medals together. CBC Sports coverage from Hungary will continue today.
Let's finish in Singapore in some sporting history made by a teenager.
My favorite song, Marcy, using chess as a metaphor. Nothing metaphorical about Gukesh Domaraju's success of late, though. Yesterday in Singapore, he became world champion. At 18, he is the youngest to do it, significantly younger than Russian legend Garry Kasparov was when he claimed his first world title at age 22. Domaraju's win yesterday came after playing 14 games over 3 weeks against his Chinese opponent. He burst into tears of joy before he spoke with reporters.
Every chess player wants to experience this moment, and very few get the chance. And to be one of them, I think the only way to explain is that I'm just living my dream. I'm really thankful to all the people who have been by my side in this journey. I'd like to thank each and every one of them, but I will have to prepare my speech first, because the kind of emotion that I'm feeling right now, I'll say something stupid.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Domaraju's world title comes with close to $2 million in prize money and plenty of praise on social media, including from Kasparov himself, who wrote, "My congratulations to Gukesh on his victory. He has summited the highest peak of all, making his mother happy." Pretty good.
Cool to hear from him. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
That's Scott Regehr with CBC Sports. Scott joins us every morning on the show. Coming up, after your news, we're going to talk to someone who's been instrumental in helping people learn to speak Anishinaabe. And yesterday, a Manitoba Ojibwe language teacher received the Order of Canada. She was in Ottawa, and she's going to join us via Zoom to talk all about it. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's minus 22, about the way we felt yesterday afternoon. So we're going to see a markedly warmer day. No warnings at all. Sunny first, some clouds moving in this afternoon. Windy, and a high today of minus 13, warmer for the weekend. Monthly property tax installments in Winnipeg are going up about 50% for most homes in January. Most of it has nothing to do with city tax hikes. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, changes to provincial education tax rebates have caused monthly tax payments to yo-yo down and then back up.
It's ridiculous, I think.
Lori Penner owns a home in southwest Winnipeg. She just found out via email her monthly property tax payment is going up, way up, in January.
You can't tell people with 2 weeks to go that they have to completely change their budget for the next year ahead.
The increase is due to a rebound in education tax. A provincial tax rebate was applied from July to December. That made monthly property tax payments unusually low during the last 6 months of 2024. Winnipeg, which collects both municipal and provincial property taxes, is now struggling to communicate monthly payments are going up. Tim Austin is the city's taxation director.
In a normal non-Canada Post-strike year, we would send out tip letters in the start of December to advise people what their January 1st payment would be.
Taxes on most Winnipeg properties will rise one more time next year. The full extent of city and school board tax hikes will be applied on July 1st. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Operators of some local businesses say the Prime Minister needs to put more thought into his Christmas gifts. The federal government's 2-month exemption on paying GST on things like toys and restaurant meals kicks in tomorrow. Ben Shantz is general manager of Game Night Games in Winnipeg. He says the tax exemption has created a logistical nightmare.
The categories they list in their announcement there are so broad that literally the entire store could fall under one or more of the products that should be exempt, but then you could also argue that they're not, and that's where a lot of the dilemma comes.
The GST holiday begins tomorrow and runs until February 15th. The number of homicides in Manitoba last year dropped to its lowest point since 2019. In a new report, Stats Canada says 74 people died by homicide last year in this province. But criminologists agree poverty levels are still driving up Manitoba's homicide rates to the highest among all Canadian provinces. Frank Cormier is a criminology professor at the University of Manitoba.
In difficult economic times, or in provinces maybe that are, in less good financial situations, you will see more alcohol and drug use and abuse, which is very closely correlated to crimes like homicides.
Nationally, the number of homicides hit its lowest point since 2020. Stats Canada says the drop is in part to a reduction in deaths related to gang and intimate partner violence. Well, put out the compost bins and Winnipeggers will come. Compost Winnipeg says its 2-month-old program with 15 drop-off sites has exploded in popularity. Carrie Blackburn at Compost Winnipeg says the amount of compostables dropped off is triple than they expected.
We've been just trying to keep up with the demand, so introducing more bins, booking unscheduled collections. So we tried to have it on a weekly basis, the collections, but it's been so popular that we've had to go 2, sometimes 3 times per week.
Blackburn says 40 tons of organics have been diverted from the landfill since mid-October. Her group is now in talks with the city about how to expand the program. They may set up more sites. The city says it can't offer curbside composting in Winnipeg for 5 more years because there's no facility big enough to process all the organic waste. Winnipeg's Christmas Cheer Board needs help getting hampers delivered to people across the city. Cheer's Shauna Bell says they still have more than 10,000 hampers in their warehouse that need to be delivered to people in need.
It's just like Christmas shopping. Everybody puts it off until the last minute, and now it's time. And it's a rush to get the hampers out. And so folks, if they have just an hour or 2 of time that they want to come out and help us, it just goes such a long way.
Bell says anyone with a vehicle who is willing to spare some time can drop by the warehouse at 895 Century. Well, Lady Like was siding with Winnipeg for a while. Josh Morrissey in the third period on TSN, a beautiful goal that ripped into the top corner of the Vegas net, a goal described by a commentator as immaculate. Wasn't enough, though. The Jets' lead against the Golden Knights ends with 2 penalties to Gabe Velarde and Dylan DeMello. The Knights force overtime and then win 3-2. DeMello spoke after the game.
I've seen guys do a lot worse and not get a call, so that's a tough pill to swallow. We all know at the end of games or overtime, it's got to be pretty egregious to be a penalty. He deemed it so.
It is the Jets' 8th straight loss to Vegas. Winnipeg ends its homestand tomorrow night, hosting the Montreal Canadiens. You can find more on last night's game, as well as other news from Winnipeg. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba, not just Winnipeg, but the entire province. It's lots of news there. Just go.
Yeah. Thanks, Hev.
Just get on it.
Just do it. All right. Heather Wells from our news department this morning. It is 7:36 a.m. It's time, speaking of the whole province, to look at our regional forecast with Avi Adiyami.
Good morning once again. Let's take off from Winnipeg, where it's chilly at minus 22 at the Fox. Expect sunshine today, turning to a mix of sun and clouds by late morning, and then we'll see highs around minus 13. But the wind chill makes it feel like minus 35 this morning. So take extra care against frostbite if you're heading outside or making that transition from one bus to another. Now, that's a similar condition for the south central parts and the Pembina Valley region. Heading west to Brandon, minus 23 at this time. The Westman region will see increasing cloudiness this morning. We do have the slight chance of light snow in the forecast. It will turn breezy by midday and temperatures would get to minus 14, though the wind chill makes it feel like minus 37. Stay warm out there. In the Parkland region, Dauphin sitting at minus 27. We will see some clouds roll in. There's a possibility of light snow later in the day. It will get breezy at some point, and then you see your highs around minus 13. But you factor in the wind chill, it feels on the range of minus 35. The Interlake region, Gimli sitting at minus 24 at this time. You should see plenty of sunshine this morning, turning to partly cloudy conditions in the afternoon and highs around minus 14. The wind chill makes it feel around minus 35, minus 36 for that region. For the Palm Flin Flon, we're looking at temperatures around minus 18 at this time. Cloudy conditions we're seeing. There's a slight chance of light snow in the forecast for that region. Breezy from the south, and then we'll see highs around minus 15. The wind chill makes it feel close to minus 31. Moving north, Thompson is cold at minus 29. We're seeing ice crystals in the air in that part of the province. Expect some clouds to roll in. Light snow possible later. The winds will turn breezy by the noon period, and then we'll see highs around minus 16, though the chills will make it feel like minus 32 for folks there. Frostbite is a concern. Now we go further north. Churchill is at minus 20 at this time. The day will be mainly cloudy, with snow expected later in the afternoon. Winds will get breezy. Temperatures will rise to minus 16. And the wind chill stays around minus 33 this morning. That snow I mentioned for that region will continue into the evening. Overall, temperatures still chilly and brutal across the province.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
It's a good word for what we've been feeling, brutal, with the wind today whipping at us. We might feel that way. Let's get to what's happening in traffic. Is it brutal or okay?
You know what? A couple things to keep an eye out for, I would say. Sheldon just gave us a call. He says the westbound north perimeter, right on the bridge there where you cross the Red River there, the Main Street Bridge. He says there's actually a collision in the left-hand lane, and that's causing some backup. So keep right to get around that. As well, not long ago, there was a collision southbound La Jamodière just past Regent. That collision has now been cleared, but the shoulder lane remains blocked. So look out for that. But that has been cleared, so it should be hopefully clear sooner rather than later. If you see anything else going on out there, though, if you're walking, bike, and driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Well, next on CBC, she has worked for decades to pass on knowledge as an Ojibwe language teacher. She even played a pivotal role in translating this beloved film. It's probably music you recognize. That's a bit of the trailer from the Anishinaabe-Moan version of Star Wars. It had its world premiere, you might recall, here in Winnipeg this past summer. This is just one of the many ways, being involved in that film, that Patricia Ningwans has been helping Indigenous people learn or reconnect and retain the language. Now, 2 years ago, Patricia was appointed to the Order of Canada. The pandemic, however, delayed the ceremony until now, and she received her medal yesterday from the Governor-General in Ottawa. Patricia Ningwans is preserving the language for so many generations. She's a residential school survivor. She spent decades honoring, teaching, and sharing the language at schools, sharing the Indigenous languages that schools tried to eradicate. And I also want to mention that she was the first editor of Wawate News. That's the longest running national Indigenous publication. And she also is the author of Talking Kukum's Language, Canada's most widely used Anishinaabe-Moan textbook. I could go on and on. There's so many reasons she received the order. But we're just excited for her as a Manitoban, and she's with us now, still in Ottawa. She's on the phone. Hi there, Patricia.
Hello.
I'm going to do my best, okay, to congratulate you properly. So, Gima mi weni mi go.
Okay.
That's close. I hope that's close to congratulations in Anishinaabe-Moan. I was trying my best.
Thank you.
What did it feel like for you yesterday to receive this honor?
It was very special. There were, a room full of other honorees, amazing people. It was just very humbling to be in the company of all these scientists and, wonderful people.
What moments particularly stood out from the day for you?
Talking with the other people, talking with, I spent some time between two honorees and had a really good discussion with them. Their path, how they got there. That's what really struck me. And it was so nice to see my family there too, as part of the audience when we're being in a procession.
Mm-hmm.
That was so very special.
Your family is also already carrying on language. Your grandson Ondeg was actually voiced Luke Skywalker in Star Wars and Anishinaabe-Moan. He teaches now over at the university level as well, language.
Yes.
How does it feel for you that you're already seeing the your work being passed on through your family and having this kind of impact to preserve the language?
It's totally awesome. I'm very humbly happy that my grandson is following in my footsteps, exactly doing the work I was doing at his age, and to know that he's going to continue this work in the future. That's very special.
His age is in his 20s, so you started doing this in your 20s, which of course would have been just a very different time, to say the least, in this country. What motivated you in those early days to understand and dedicate yourself to preserving the language?
I think it's my mother and my grandmother. They were language nerds. Now that I think about it, they loved talking in the language, especially my mother. She could come up with these really unusual words, and now that I'm working on my dictionary for the University of Manitoba, I recall those words and I'm putting them in there because otherwise they'll disappear forever.
When you were there yesterday, did you reflect on your journey? Thinking about your own journey in this country and the history of residential schools in your own family, and then there you are receiving this honor with such a complicated history with Canada, when you're getting that medal put around your neck. Yeah.
Yes. They didn't give us a medal around our necks. That's the next level.
Got it. Okay.
We get a medal to hang on our chest.
Got it.
In a pin. Anyway, yeah. I think what I thought about mostly was getting this award, this honor. It brings me the opportunity to talk about my favorite subject, talk about my vision of the Ojibwe language 100 years from now. I've written a 100-year plan to ensure that we will have a language spoken in that time.
So tell us what's key to that plan.
Okay, one thing we have to do is create speakers like Andik, my grandson, through immersion programs, really good programs that will get them speaking. And then the other thing we need to do is to promote the language. We have to get rid of the blocks that we have that prevents us from passing on the language to the next generation, and that prevents the students from saying words. They really get stuck in their throats. The other thing we need to do is modernize the language so that we can use it without having to resort to English words. And of course, the most important one will be to create movies, audio materials, novels, so that the language will, as spoken, will live.
What does it mean to you right now to already see people starting to really, lean in and embrace the language and reclaim it as part of culture?
That's wonderful, totally wonderful, and a lot of these young people are from homes where the language was suppressed by their parents because of what they experienced as children, and so to see them break through that, to try. My students at the university are really good examples. They're so committed. They're so beautiful.
What would you say to your younger self? I mean, could your younger self, I should ask, have ever imagined that moment yesterday, where you've come this far to preserve language? I mean, and obviously the history is that you're preserving something that against all odds that could have been eradicated and disappearing. Could you ever have imagined that you'd come this far, Patricia? Have we lost our guest? I think we lost the phone line. It's okay. It's okay. That's unfortunate, obviously, but we have lost our phone line there. I'm not certain what happened there technically. Nevertheless, what an honor. And you can read more about Patricia's honor, and you can also see more as well at online, because they do record the ceremony. And if you're watching on YouTube during our interview there with Patricia, she's in Ottawa this morning still, you would have seen some of the images that the federal government sent out as recipients received the Order of Canada yesterday. Now, Patricia was actually awarded the Order of Canada. It was announced a couple of years ago, but because of the pandemic, the official ceremony was held yesterday. Patricia Ningwans is an Ojibwe language teacher, the recipient of the order. Two other Manitobans, by the way, also received the Order of Canada in Ottawa yesterday, musician Steve Bell and Professor Jan English.
I'm Nala Ayed, host of Ideas. Are there better ways for us to talk to each other? And could that help us build a better society? Novelist and poet Ian Williams wants to start a conversation about conversations. The 2024 CBC Massey Lectures on Ideas, What I Mean to Say, Remaking Conversations in Our Time. Find Ideas wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Time right now is 10 to 8 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I want to talk about what's coming up after 8 o'clock, because this is the an ongoing segment that we have in a series that we started rolling out earlier this week. So we have been talking about the national fertility rate. It is slowly shrinking. It is at a record low, in fact, across the country. So we are doing an ongoing series about why. What are the factors that lead people to not have kids? Today, we're going to hear from two Winnipeg women about why they have made that decision. So that's coming up on Information Radio after 8 o'clock. Right now, though, the clock is ticking on a social services center located in Winnipeg's Millennium Library. Come December 31st, Community Connections will close its doors for good. The space, which provides support to unhoused Winnipeggers, was cut from the city's 2025 budget. That announcement coming in the draft budget this week. Now, Finance Committee Chairperson Jeff Berwadi says the space is a safety concern for library staff and members of the public. But some, like Al Weeb, disagree and say it's more complicated than that. Weeb is a longtime advocate for Winnipeggers who are unhoused or live in poverty. And Al's in studio with us, Al Weeb, this morning. Good morning, Al.
Yeah, good morning, Marcy.
So for those that don't know, first of all, just tell us, about the services that this space offers downtown at the library.
Yeah, it was multifaceted and really, really important to the folks that inhabit the library every day. As a homeless person myself, way back there, I used the library as a shelter from the elements, plus communication with the computers. And what Community Connections did was provide resources for housing, for medical and mental health issues. They had organizations throughout the city come in, several times a week, just to be there as a support, like say Canadian Mental Health Association, Red Road Lodge, places that could provide housing, places that could provide support were there every single day. And it was, they provided free coffee. They had a computer in the room. And, what people don't realize also is that some folks are not allowed in the library for one reason or another. And this was a place that they could go and still use the services of the library. And it was a very welcoming place. And I personally think that if I would have been, if that Community Connections would have been there when I was on the street, I would not have been on the street as long because I was too proud to go seek it out. But when you walk in the library, this space is right in your face. It's right there. Yeah.
So geographically, this was important as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And, I'm on the, still am, I guess, if there is one, community advisory board for the library. And we worked about 2 years just to get Community Connections put in place. It meant a lot to me, coming from my experiences. And for all the effort and time we spent on it, just to see it cut is really tragic, But I did expect it. They cut out the community grants program, and then they had to reinstate it because of backlash. They cut out the poverty reduction strategy budget. Yeah.
What I want to get some reaction to what Finance Committee Chairperson Jeff Berwadi has raised. He said he called it a safety concern for library staff and members of the public. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't agree with that. I used to go, walk through the library, I'd walk through the mall all the time. I'd go for my morning coffee, and I would talk to staff in the Community Connection space because I know a lot of them. And that was never an issue for them. I'm sure every once in a while somebody would come in with and maybe have an outburst or something. But it wasn't an issue for staff at Community Connections, and I think that's just a reason that they're trying to build up to take it down.
Could some of this? Could some of this be related to what we've been discussing? Across Canada, there's discussion about libraries as social spaces and for outreach and resources. There's an ideology for some that some believe ideologically that libraries should not be that. Others say libraries have been that, and so we should expand on that. Could some of it be looking at the library from that point of view? Could it have been turning into more of a social services space than maybe was initially intended, do you think?
Well, probably 30, 40 people who are unsheltered use the library every single day. And so I think this is just an extension of that and just give these folks a leg up or an arm, a lift up. I do personally think it belongs in the library because it is used by so many people that need the space. And to have that service provided right up front and personal is so terribly important. I was never accessing any kind of services, but again, like I said, it's in your face. It's right there, and it's appropriately located. I truly believe it belongs in the library system. Sorry.
If that's okay, do you need a glass of water? Corey can maybe help us out here. Live show, so no worries, Al. Corey will pop in. We're good. He's already gone running. I see him there. Let me ask you this: if your view is it was that, as you said, you feel like that this is sort of an excuse, I think you put it, for just wanting to make this cut, that it's not a safety concern. what might be the reason for cutting it then, do you think? Why would why would the city not want that service downtown?
You know what? I really do not understand that. I do not understand cutting community grants. I do not understand cutting poverty reduction strategy, all things that I've been really involved in, because these are services that help the most vulnerable. And I would think that there are other places that you can cut. For example, the community grant program, they cut $2 million out of $5 million until there was such an outcry that they had to put it back in. I just don't understand the lack of understanding about what the folks need, right? I think that's it.
If the city said, okay, we don't believe this should be in the library, but we're going to open maybe something downtown adjacent or somewhere near that has the same supports and services, what would your view be on that?
I'd be okay with that. I would. Any service is a good service, and the way it was set up, and I was really, really happy to be part of that process and determining what it looked like, and having community entities, community support groups come in and offer services every single day. I think it's really, truly important. Yes, I wouldn't be against that either. For sure.
What does it look like in Winnipeg right now in terms of accessing supports like this? I know yesterday we did some reporting because one of our associate producers was talking about a new space on Jarvis. I believe it's youth oriented though.
Yeah, if you're talking about the harm reduction.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, there's spaces that are opening. A lot of them are oriented toward youth. Is there enough oriented just to the overall, general public or person that might be living houseless? And is there enough downtown?
There's not enough downtown. Truly, sure. Especially downtown. You have entities like the Trinity United right across the street. They do drop-in stuff and they do some other services, but not enough. But right directly downtown, there are very few that do the services for the vulnerable there. And further down, way out in the core, you have Main Street Project, you have Shalom, Lighthouse Mission, all those. But right downtown, there is nothing.
If the community rallies, they could save this. If they don't, what do you hope the city might consider doing next?
I would hope that because it's so vital, and I think that the community connections overall, in the big picture, saved lives because I know they did have folks get housing, which is a lifesaver, and they also, had addiction. People come in like AFM and others. I think they need to really keep up, whether it's at the library or not. Like you said, they need to establish something in the downtown area that provides services that are not there right now.
Appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the offer to actually do this.
Nice to see you.
It means that's a hard thing, so
Yeah, it's nice to see you in studio. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marcy. Appreciate it.
That's Al Weeb, advocate for those who live in poverty and those who are unhoused. Al, at one point in his life, was also living unhoused. So if you have a reaction to this space closing, or you have a thought on where we could go next, or where you're hoping the city might go next with it, or maybe you agree that it should close, or maybe you've worked at the library and you have thoughts on how it was working or not for you, we'd love to hear from you, of course, as we expand all perspectives on the story. 788-3205. Heather Wells is here with other news updates.
Good morning. Well, monthly property tax payment installments in Winnipeg are going up about 50% for most homes in January. A provincial education tax rebate from July to December this year caused the monthly tax installments to be unusually low. Well, they are going to bounce back up. We'll hear more about that. And it seems Winnipeggers want to compost. In the 2 months since the 15 drop-off sites were opened, demand has tripled. Compost Winnipeg's Carrie Blackburn met with city officials this week.
Wow, this is way more successful than we thought it was going to be.
Blackburn says they are now in talks with the city about opening even more sites. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Coming up on the Friday morning show after 8, the national fertility rate is at a record low in Canada, and we're doing a series about that. In our next installment about why people choose not to have kids, we're going to talk to 2 Winnipeg women who've made that decision. So stay tuned. That's coming up after 8. Right now, it's -22 in the city of Winnipeg. Going to be around -13, but the winds will make it feel really cold today still, so bundle up. World Report's next.
On Q with Tom Power.
It's been 8 years since Gwen Stefani released an album of original music. Now, after some time away from music to heal, she's back with a new album called Bouquet. Gwen Stefani will be here to tell you about making the album and to look back on her time with the great No Doubt. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
A perfect cake, easy rack of lamb, colorful winter salad. Cookbooks are a lovely place to find kitchen inspiration, and our panel of recipe aficionados is here with their top cookbooks of the year. It's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. It is now official. Tomorrow marks the beginning of the Liberal government's GST-HST holiday after the legislation received royal assent last night. Scott Peterson is here to break it all down for us. Scott.
John, well, we know a couple of things. We know that it starts tomorrow. We know this is generally sort of focused on younger families with children to give them a little bit of breathing room as we head towards this holiday season. But depending on where people are, this could be a break of anywhere between 5 and 15%. For example, in Ontario, that's got the PST wrapped in with the GST, that old HST could be up to 15%. So these are substantial savings for people out there. And the list is complicated. For more details, go to cbcnews.ca. But food and groceries, for example, all now non-alcoholic beverages at the grocery stores, alcoholic beverages below 23%. So there's a list of items here, and it's very hit and miss as far as what's included, what is not. So people are advised to look at these lists before they go out and shopping if this is their goal. Also, to mention as well, this is expected to cost the government at provincial and federal levels up to about $2.7 billion for this 2-month tax break.
Now, we know that running a business at the best of times is a challenge, so presumably administering this is going to be a challenge for some businesses.
Yeah, you could even say a nightmare. Some businesses are very worried at the prospect of having to change over a whole multitude of things at the cash register for the next 2 months. But at the same time, any tax break is a good tax break. It gets people out in the stores. This is the idea behind this. But there is going to be some trepidation by business owners as far as how to implement this, the costs associated with getting an accountant, for example, or anybody having to change the machinery that collects the tax. But still, they're optimistic that this is going to increase sales, and this is a very important time of the year for retailers out in Canada as far as their margins go, and this is an important time of the year.
Business reporter Scott Peterson walking us through it all. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, John.
Overseas, Ukraine says nearly 300 Russian missiles and drones targeted the country's energy infrastructure this morning. It's the latest in a dozen attacks against Ukraine's power grid this year. Russia says the strikes were in response to Ukraine using American-made missiles to hit targets in Russia. Briar Stewart has the story.
Inside a metro station in Kyiv, residents sit bundled in their winter coats, looking at their phones for updates on the latest missile and drone attack, which has sent some families underground. Every night my child is constantly frightened, said one mother. Ukraine's president says Russia launched 93 missiles and nearly 200 drones at sites across the country on Friday morning. He said most of the missiles were shot down. There are few details on the impact of the attacks, but officials say some equipment at thermal power plants were damaged and rolling power cuts were introduced as a result. Russia's aerial attack comes as it continues to try to push forward in southeastern Ukraine near the strategic hub of Pokrovsk. While in the north, Ukraine believes that Moscow is likely trying to recapture hundreds of square kilometers of territory in Russia's Kursk region ahead of January 20th, when U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is inaugurated. Trump has repeatedly vowed to quickly end the war after taking office.
So it's slightly irrelevant to us on the ground.
This soldier, who asked CBC News to only be identified by his call sign Voodoo, is a Brit who's been fighting for Ukraine for 6 months. He's been in the Kursk area throughout the fall.
And whatever happens, we'll be here until the end.
Half of a dozen Ukrainian soldiers based in Kursk have told CBC News that they've been ordered to hold the line and that they have a hard time envisioning just what kind of deal Trump could broker, given that the Kremlin says it's not willing to make any concessions when it comes to Ukraine. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
In Syria. The country's interim prime minister leads Friday prayers at a mosque in Damascus. Large crowds are turning out there and at mosques across the country. It's been less than a week since the fall of the Assad regime, but as celebrations continue, aid agencies are reminding donors about the need for humanitarian assistance. The CBC's senior international correspondent Margaret Evans has more from Damascus.
The sense of a new dawn breaking still dominates the streets of Damascus. People wrapped in or handing out the opposition standard, Syria's new flag.
I'm very happy because the future is for us, not for the last rulers.
There are still underlying nerves, the various rebel groups who've taken control disparate and untried in ruling a country the size of Syria. Aid agencies hope the euphoria doesn't overshadow the ongoing need for humanitarian assistance in the country.
You've seen it, jubilation.
Canadian Ken Crossley is the country director for the World Food Programme in Syria. He says humanitarian assistance must remain a safety valve for people, especially during times of transition.
There's anxiety about what might be coming next. And so people are moving from one city to another where they think they might find family, friends.
That's on top of a population where millions have already been displaced by Syria's long civil war. The UN estimates that more than 70% of people here are reliant on assistance of some kind. The WFP has just launched a new funding appeal to buy and distribute food for up to 2.8 million people. He says the group established relations with the rebel forces as they moved south from Aleppo through local NGOs.
Establishing technical contact very, very quickly with new authorities coming into town to let them know who we were.
Crossley describes himself as cautiously optimistic about Syria's future, but says the WFP is preparing for all scenarios. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Damascus.
Donald Trump's former national security advisor has a message for Canada. Brace for more ridicule and threats as Trump returns to the White House. John Bolton also has some tips for Justin Trudeau. He spoke with the CBC's Katie Simpson.
I think Trump gets a laugh from it. I think it's that simple.
John Bolton says Donald Trump is revealing his true self when he cracks jokes about Canada and makes references to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as a governor. Bolton knows how the president-elect thinks. While he's a critic now, he once served as Trump's national security advisor.
He can be mean at times, and I think he's poking at Justin Trudeau and trying to humiliate him.
Bolton says the best way for Canada to avoid Trump's tariff threat is to play into the president-elect's ego.
Make the case not why the threat will hurt Canada, but why not invoking the tariffs will help Trump. What makes Donald Trump look good?
And he says Trudeau should avoid weighing in on domestic U.S. politics. Surprised to learn the Prime Minister suggested women's rights suffered a setback when Kamala Harris lost the election.
If Prime Minister Trudeau hasn't figured this out, I'm happy to offer some free advice. Don't get involved in the middle of American politics. It's not going to do you any good.
Bolton says on top of meeting Trump's demands to improve border security, Canada could head off some of his complaints by stepping up its defense spending and taking on more responsibility on the world stage. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
And finally, a mystery above New Jersey and across the eastern seaboard. Flying objects, possibly drones, hovering in the night sky. As Steve Futterman reports, it has a lot of people scratching their heads.
So far, it remains a mystery.
Not really sure what it was. Definitely something flying low and fast.
In the sky.
It was coming in our direction. It spun around, did 180 degrees, went back out the other way, then it kind of looped around and then took off past.
It may sound a bit familiar.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
It's definitely not Superman. The flying objects have been spotted in the skies over various states, including New Jersey, Maryland, and Connecticut.
Definitely wasn't a plane because it was too low. And it was also going back and forth and then forwards and backwards.
But no one can say for sure what they are. Brian Bergen is a New Jersey assemblyman.
We don't know where they're coming from, where they're going to, and who's flying them.
John Kirby is the White House National Security Communications Advisor.
We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or a public safety threat.
On social media, there are all sorts of theories. Some have suggested a Middle East connection. At the Pentagon, a denial.
There is not any truth to that. There is no Iranian ship off the coast of the United States, and there's no so-called mothership launching drones towards the United States.
This woman is frustrated.
What are they? Who's sending them up there? Why doesn't anybody know?
As speculation about what's flying in American skies runs hot, no one still seems to have definitive answers. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Being a child-free person, I always say I felt like a unicorn because I just felt like I was the only one of my kind, but I knew, like, statistically that there would be a lot of other women who would also be child-free.
Canada's declining fertility rate is at the center of our new series. This week, we started the series, and in the coming days, we're going to hear even more interviews from Manitobans who have chosen not to have kids, and we're going to learn more about why, what goes into it, what are the stigmas that go along with making that personal choice, and why is that stigma there? We're going to hear from two women who live in Manitoba who have made that decision in their lives, so we're going to have their stories on this half hour as part of our ongoing series. In case you missed it, we looked at the demographics of why this is happening across Canada and what those rates are, the declining fertility rates, in an interview earlier this week. So to hear that, please go to our CBC Listen app. But stay tuned for our conversation. This is Information Radio on your Friday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube on CBC. And let's get into morning headlines before we dip into what your weather's like. Heather Wells is in. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, monthly property tax payment installments in Winnipeg are going up about 50% for most homes in January. A provincial education tax rebate from July to December this year caused monthly tax installments to be unusually low. They're bouncing back starting January 1st. We'll hear from one homeowner coming up. And the Christmas Cheer Board is asking for help to make the season brighter for thousands of Winnipeggers. Cheers Executive Director Shauna Bell says they still have more than 10,000 hampers in their warehouse that need to be delivered to people in need. We'll hear from her coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi, the numbers look good, but the wind looks bad. So what's the weather going to feel like today?
A cold start to the day once again across the province. But, that southerly wind signals like a change in the weather pattern. We should expect the temperatures in southern Manitoba to keep, climbing until Saturday morning. We expect some single digits in the forecast with high temperatures for the weekend in Winnipeg. But right now we are at minus 22. We should see the sun very soon, and then it's returned partly cloudy later, expecting a high of minus 13. And with the wind chill factored in, it's going to feel like minus 35. There's a risk of frostbites in play there, so take it easy out there.
So seriously, overheard in the newsroom this morning, someone was like, oh, it feels like minus 35. At least we're not to the minus 40s.
I'll take minus 35.
We're in Manitoba when?
It's a dry cold.
Right?
Exactly.
I love living here sometimes. I like when people smile through it, right? Because we all know it hurts a little sometimes too. Okay, Corey Funk, obviously you heard him, is here to update the commute.
Yeah, a couple things to keep an eye out for. So got a call earlier from Anne. If you're going westbound Jubilee and things are backed up, probably because there's been a van with a trailer parked there for like 2 days straight. So that's just before Riverside there on westbound Jubilee. So keep left to get around that. As well, got a call from Sheldon, the westbound north perimeter. Just as you're kind of on the bridge there, crossing the Red River, the Main Street Bridge. On the left lane, there's been a multi-vehicle collision. Keep right to get around that. And finally, Inkster and Keewatin, there's emergency crews blocking that southbound median lane, as well as the northbound turn lane, as well as that westbound middle lane on Keewatin. So a bit of a kerfuffle around there. So just heads up if you're going around that. Might be some backups. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line if you're walking, biking, driving. I'd love to hear from you. 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned earlier this week, we were talking to a StatsCan expert who says this country's fertility rate is at its lowest it's been for 2 years in a row. So let's dig into our series. For some people, the decision around having children is an easy one. For others, it's not that simple, but what we all know is it's personal. We're going to talk to two Manitobans next who've made that decision. 35-year-old Caitlin Sawatsky's in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
And 37-year-old Jill Richaud is also in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you two are friends. Obviously, you're here. You both made the decision to be child-free. Caitlin, what prompted the decision? And I mean, I'm just curious, how old were you when you started thinking about it?
I would say around like mid-20s. I was just kind of like, I thought, in the future, when I feel like it. And then I was kind of, like, okay, well, what if I never feel like it? And that started like a very intense anxiety spiral where it took me lots of, reflection and therapy and sorting out why I felt so stressed and internal judgment because of how we're raised. It's just assumed that women will have children and it's just like expected of you. And so it was just like a lot of anxiety. And then I realized, I just don't want kids. And that's okay.
Yeah. So the process of analyzing those feelings, as you said, what factors were you thinking about when you were thinking about what it would mean to have kids? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, for me, it just kind of felt like my life would totally change. And like there's a culture around parenthood in Canada, in North America, that's just very all-consuming. So it kind of felt like the end for me, the end of my life. And then it would all become about some little person, And like back in my day, you could just throw your kids out on the corner and like I just play and my mom would be like, come back for dinner. And it was like much more hands-off. And there was a lot more support and financial security and stuff like that. And
you were weighing all that.
Yeah, I was weighing all of that. And the judgments women face with each other, like on social media now, it's like, breast is best. Well, what if you can't breastfeed? And like, there's all this judgment about every decision. And I was just like, you know what? I'm opting out.
This is the decision for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how about for you, Jill? Tell me a little bit about your journey to come to the decision.
Yeah, so for me, I kind of always knew. So even as a kid, there was part of me that just sort of deep down knew, I don't think parenthood and becoming a mother is going to be for me. And I did think, maybe I'll change my mind because everyone kind of tells you that you're going to change your mind as you get older. And then similar to Caitlin, I just didn't. And as I got older and I sort of reflected more on this, like deep in my bones, knowing that it wasn't going to be the path for me, and I started to embrace that and realize that that was okay. It allowed me to just be child-free and realize that that's the best version of my life. I think of it a bit like maybe the same sort of feeling that some folks get knowing how they really want kids and they really want to be a mother. I think I had a similar feeling. It was just for the opposite.
Got it. How has the decision affected your life?
So for me, it's allowed me to fully be myself and embrace who I am. So I'm able to live a life that makes more sense to me. I like a lot of solitude. I'm very introverted. I like a quieter, slower life where I'm able to prioritize my friendships and doing things in the community, things of that nature. And I knew that if I had kids, that would have to shift and change. And I just didn't feel like that was going to be the best version of life for me.
And how has the decision affected your life, Caitlin? What's it been like?
Yeah, kind of a bit of the same. I also like my peace and quiet. And, for me, I just am happy with, my spouse, my friendships, the community that, we've created as child-free people is very important to me. And the relationship I have with like family and my dogs, very important to me. I just feel like I'm content, like nothing's missing. Like I don't feel that pull. I don't know. I don't have a maternal bone in my body except towards my dog.
What's the stigma like?
Because I work from home and I don't interact with like the public very much, I don't get the like, well, when are you having kids? Why? You'll change your mind and wait until you blah, whatever. I don't really get a lot of that, so I'm kind of sheltered from it, and I've structured my life with a lot of child-free people in it.
Got it. How about you, Jill? What would you say the common misconceptions or stigmas are around it?
I would say that I've had the range of reactions. So the idea that I'll change my mind. I actually had someone tell me once that I'll feel differently once I'm pregnant, which seemed like a interesting thing to say and not a theory I wanted to test. But so I've heard that. I've heard, it's a selfish decision, that I'll really regret it. I'll be alone when I'm old, those kinds of things.
A selfish decision because you didn't have children?
Yes.
What sense do you make of that?
I tend to not feel that the idea of selfishness is a helpful term when we talk about reproductive choice. And I think what's important for people to know about a lot of child-free folks is that it's not a decision that people make lightly. It's typically a decision that people make after a lot of self-reflection, a lot of time, and it's made more from self-awareness than it is from selfishness.
That's really well stated, I think. Do you get presumptions about why you made the decision ever? I'm a child-free person as well, so I find that people presume what my journey was, and there's very few people that know my personal story and how I came to it, and everyone's is so different. So it's just interesting to me because people will say, "Oh, you chose to be this a career woman. Clearly, that's what you did." And then I don't even engage in the conversation because people didn't need to know my story. But I'm wondering whether or not you face those sort of things, even though this is deeply personal. People seem to feel that they understand why you made the choice.
Yeah, I do sometimes get that, oh, are you really into your career? Like that I need to have one other thing
and you could be.
Of.
It's not a negative thing, but yeah.
Exactly, you could be. For me, that's not the case. But yeah, so you do get that. Sometimes people think that they know, not realizing the million different reasons that people make this choice.
Tell me a bit about the community that, Caitlin, you were referring to, of child-free people that have come together and what that you said that's meant a lot to you.
Yeah, well, a few years ago, I was just like woefully lonely, in the COVID era. And I was just like, there's got to be a way to connect with women. So I just went on meetup.com and I created a group like Child Free Winnipeg Women. And people just started coming, and we got like a great group, and lots of people come repeatedly, and I've built a really great friend group from it, and it's really been amazing. Everyone's like, oh, thank goodness you made this group, because it was just like all my friends were having kids, and then I was kind of left in the dust because it makes sense. Mothers want to be friends with people with children. They want to be like-minded people, and so do we.
So you have a Substack too, Jill, where you talk about being child-free. Why did you start that specifically?
I started that because similar to what Caitlin was just talking about, I think there's a lot of people who maybe are thinking about this or have made that decision. And if you're not surrounded by other like-minded individuals, it can be a little bit isolating sometimes. And so I wanted to start the Substack to kind of put thoughts out there and try and reach other people who might be feeling some of the ways that I was when making that decision.
There's societal norms, right, that come with, as you said, I mean, people having children, and then there's all kinds of things that happen, that you aren't, naturally part of, right? You think about, Mother's Days or graduation for kids or things like, obviously, mat leave. Like, there's just different things that get discussed. But the other thing that happens is the baby shower. But I think this is interesting because you actually had a shower. Who threw a shower for you, Jill?
I did. Some of my wonderful friends did. It started as a joke. I made an offhanded comment to a friend of mine that, I should have a no baby shower. And then she was like, that's amazing. And then multiple of my friends, both child having and child free, got together and threw me a shower. We had games and food. I had a registry. It was the most amazing day. It meant so much to me. It was this wonderful celebration of love and community and friendship. It was amazing.
What would you say, Caitlin, to someone who's listening who's struggling with the decision? Whether or not you have some advice, because obviously you said that it took you some time for yourself. So I'm wondering what you would say to someone that might be standing in that moment.
It's really, really, really hard. I would say try to be kind to yourself, give yourself time, allow yourself the freedom to make the choice. And I just you're fine either way. Like whether you make that decision or you're not, your life's going to be great. In both ways, you gain something, in both ways, you lose something. So just trying to make sense of what is the best decision for you, and don't listen to anybody else, like your mom. If she's like, "You give me a grandkid," like, this is about you and your life and what you think will bring you fulfillment. So I think that's really all that matters. So
how about you, Jill? What would you say to someone if they're listening?
Very similar. I think it's about trying to quiet the noise that might be around you, because there's a lot that could be out there, and just really tune into yourself and what you feel like is going to be best for you.
How old were you when you were going through your decision-making process? Caitlin shared a little bit more, and I didn't really dig into that for you.
I mean, I always kind of knew since I was a kid, but I would have been in my later 20s and early 30s when I fully embraced that this was the right choice.
Have either of you come up against the narrative that somehow you're missing something about being a woman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that feel when that is put on you?
It doesn't feel good. It just says that there's only one way to be a woman. There's one valid life choice. It's, go to school, get married, get a house, have kids. And it's like, well, maybe that life script isn't for everyone. And we can all have valid choices that don't all look the same. And the fact that we even have a choice is not something I take for granted. Like, we didn't always have a choice what women could do, right? It was just have kids. So to still have that put on us, that there's only one way to do womanhood, look in the mirror when you think that, because what you're really saying is you resent that we have choices.
Just last, where can people find this group if they want to sign up and they're listening? Is it open to anyone, or?
It's open to child-free
Obviously.
and childless people. So people who want kids, but for whatever reason they don't have them, welcome to join. And child-free people who've made that choice out of a positive decision for their lives. And it's on meetup.com.
Yeah.
So find us.
Thank you both for being here today and being so open with your own personal stories. Really appreciate you both. Thank you so much, Jill.
Thank you.
And thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much.
So this is our series about what's happening with Canada's declining fertility rate, and we're looking at people's choices and the various ways that they come to be childless or child-free, as we've been saying. We've been in conversation with two Manitobans, Caitlin Sawatsky and Jill Richaud, who have both been in studio with us this morning on CBC. If you want to weigh in, 788-3205.
Left the whiskey out by the fire. It was gone by the morning. You only come once a year, then you're gone without a warning. Are you a cowboy Santa rolling through the towns? A pair of blue crazy boots are coming down the chimney tonight under neon lights, riding your sleigh into the sunset. You're a cowboy Santa. I'll bet you're a cowboy Santa. Silverado in the driveway, tumbleweed instead of mistletoe. I asked for a country Christmas, that's right. A little Elvis on the radio. Are you a cowboy Santa rolling through the towns? Pair of blue crazy boots are coming down the chimney tonight under neon lights, riding your sleigh into the sunset. I'll bet you're a cowboy Santa. I'll bet you're a cowboy. I hear steel guitars instead of silver bells. A little lonesome road, but darling, I can tell it ain't your first rodeo. 'Cause you're a cowboy Santa. You're a cowboy. Yeah, 'cause you're a cowboy Santa rolling through the towns. Pair of blue crazy boots are coming down chimney tonight under neon lights, riding your sleigh into the sunset. I'll bet you're a cowboy Santa. Yeah, you're a cowboy.
So a bit of music this morning from Montreal's Brittany Canal, who has released a new Christmas track. She's imagining in that one the new version of Santa Claus. It's called Cowboy Santa. Corey Funk has popped in because we actually have a few things developing in traffic.
Yeah, we got a few calls, particularly on Sherbrooke, right around Cumberland, Notre Dame area there in the middle lane. There's been a collision between a semi and a car. Emergency vehicles are on scene. So not too sure exactly what's being blocked at this point because it seems to be changing pretty quickly. But just heads up that that's happening there as well. Thanks to Sarah for that call. Got a call from Lorenzo as well. Southbound Osborne at Gertrude, there's a stalled car blocking the curb lane. That seems to have just happened as well. So keep left to get around that. If you see anything else, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, I want to take a moment to thank the people that work so hard in putting the programs together. I always say you hear us on the air, but you're hearing their work, calling the guests, booking the stories, having conversations with folks before you hear them here on the radio, on the airwaves. So big thanks to our associate producers in our unit and to all of the producers. So Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, Donna Carrero, Robin Summerfield, Kalkadan Mulugeta, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, May McKillop, Marshall Hodgins, Angelina Peltier, Emma Fazakis, Dylan Longhurst, Carmen Ponto, and Bruce Layden. As well, Emily Brass has been working in unit. Shanley Vidal is our community reporter. Jim Agapito is a reporter in unit. Our YouTube producer, Kevin Nipatebo. Wendy Parker is one of our producers. Nellie Gonzalez is the show producers overall. And Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio. And that is for the morning show, the noon show, the weekend morning show, as well as Up to Speed. And of course, the weekend morning show, Nadia Kidwai is the host of. So big thanks to everyone who works so hard in all of our CBC programming hours. Appreciate you here to reflect the stories of Manitobans. Speaking of which, let's go to our CBC Manitoba News Center.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is sunny, minus 22 right now, and that's about as warm as we were yesterday. We're going to warm up to minus 13 this afternoon. It's going to be windy and warmer for the weekend. Thousands of Winnipeg homeowners just found out through email yesterday their monthly property tax installments will rise about 50% in January. Most of the increase has nothing to do with city tax hikes. Instead, it is a rebound effect from a provincial education tax rebate this year. Lori Penner owns a home in southwest Winnipeg. She says many homeowners need more than 2 or 3 weeks to budget for a bigger tax installment.
People aren't prepared for that. Like, they had to have known that this was coming, and how can you not prepare people in simple language to make them understand what's going on?
Winnipeg has to collect education taxes on behalf of the province. The city's taxation director says the Canada Post strike made it tough to let property owners know their monthly installments are going up. Some Manitoba small business owners say the federal government's GST holiday is more like the nightmare before Christmas. Starting tomorrow, the federal tax will be taken off a wide range of goods and services, including restaurant meals, beverages, and toys. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau touting it as a way to make life more affordable for Canadians. But David Newsom at Hildegard's Bakery in Winnipeg says he's working overtime to go through his inventory and to change his menus and signage.
It comes out of small business owners' sleep, basically. Like, we're all going to have to do it, but I can't imagine that there's anyone who actually thinks this is a good idea.
The GST break will run for 2 months until February 15th. Winnipeg's community drop-off composting program has exploded in popularity. Bins were set up at 15 sites across the city in October. Carrie Blackburn at Compost Winnipeg says the amount of organic waste dropped off is triple than what they expected. She says it started right after Halloween when people were unloading their pumpkins.
That just kind of put composting into people's hands, realizing where the drop-offs were, and then they were just basically translating that behavior from just a pumpkin to household weekly waste. And so we've just seen the program blow up. It's been very successful.
Blackburn says they have added more bins and are collecting more than once a week where necessary. 40 tons of organics have been diverted from the landfill. The group is now in talks with the city about how to expand with more drop-off sites. Curbside composting in Winnipeg, however, is still 5 years away. Newly released data by Stats Canada shows the number of homicides in this country last year was at its lowest level since 2020. But almost 4 of every 10 homicides committed in Canada last year involved a firearm. Frank Cormier is a criminology professor at the University of Manitoba. He says handguns have been involved in more murders over the years, and that raises a level of concern.
Most of the murders in Canada are not well planned out. They're not thought out. They're sort of in the heat of the moment. So anytime we see more firearms being used for murders, that can be an indication that there is more planning going into a killing, and that can be an important difference.
Manitoba also experienced a drop in the number of homicides from 89 victims in 2022 to 74 last year. Winnipeg's Christmas Cheer Board needs more help to get hampers delivered to people across the city. Cheer's Shauna Bell says they still have more than 10,000 hampers in their warehouse that need to be delivered to people in need.
It's just like Christmas shopping. Everybody puts it off until the last minute, and now it's time, and it's a rush to get the hampers out. And so folks, if they have just an hour or two of time that they want to come out and help us, it just goes such a long way.
Bell says anyone with a vehicle who is willing to spare some time can drop by the warehouse at 895 Century. It's open from 9 to 8 weekdays and 9 to 4 on weekends. The last day for deliveries for the Christmas Cheer Board is December 23rd. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
Hope you have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
So Heather Wells and Megan Ketchison and Alana Cole in our news department this morning. All right, a last look at this pesky traffic. You're just on before the news, Corey, but what should we mention?
Yeah, Sherbrooke in the middle lane. There's been a collision right around Cumberland. Emergency crews are on scene, so not sure what's exactly blocked there, but maybe backed up. As well, Inkster and Kuwait emergency crews are blocking the southbound median lane, northbound turn lane, and the westbound middle lane. So heads up there. And also the westbound north perimeter right on the Main Street Bridge over the Red River there. There's also been a collision in the left lane. So keep a right to get around that.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
And Abby, a last look at our forecast.
We're looking at temperatures in the southern part of Manitoba to keep rising until Saturday morning. We should see single digits somewhere in between this when we get to the weekend. The Red River Valley today actually is going to be at minus 13, though it's going to feel like minus 35 with the wind chill. And in the northern part of the province, we're looking at wind chills in the valleys of minus 42. Overall, a chill day across the province today, but we're looking out for a warm weekend.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Big thanks to our live crew, Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, and Kevin Nipatebo. Like, seriously, you don't see what they do on the other side of the glass. I watched them all morning running around, literally running around. On the phone, running around, grabbing this, going to the green room, making calls, updating stories, cutting tape, editing. Like, it really is something. I know people hear me more than everybody else, but I just want to give a really big thank you to these three men that I work with every morning. Thank you, guys. So take care and be well, Manitoba. We are here because you're here. So we hope you tune in again on Monday morning to another edition of Information Radio here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. If you miss anything also, you can check out our podcast. It's called This is Manitoba. Take care. The Current's next.